Kelsey Johnson sat on the edge of the bleachers in the high school gym, her fingers tapping nervously on the worn-out notebook she always carried. The gym was filled with the usual hustle and bustle of students, chatter, laughter, the occasional loud shout, but for Kelsey, it felt like all the noise was muffled by a growing weight in her chest. Her eyes wandered to the basketball court, where a group of guys from her class were shooting hoops. They were loud, confident, and always surrounded by their group of friends, acting like they owned the place. To Kelsey, it felt like there were two worlds at school, one for people who fit in, and one for people like her, who always felt a little off. Kelsey had never quite fit in. She was different. Not just because of her love for pop music, but because she wasn't afraid to show it. While her classmates blasted hip-hop and rap from their earbuds, Kelsey found herself humming the latest pop hits, often getting lost in the world of Michael Jackson's electrifying moves and catchy beats. For her, pop music was more than just a genre, it was a form of escape, a world where anything was possible. But in the halls of her high school, where most of her peers lived and breathed hip-hop, Kelsey's love for pop was considered weird or out of place. It wasn't that anyone directly told her she was wrong, it was just the way people looked at her when she tapped her foot to an MJ song or started humming a catchy tune by Britney Spears. It was the little things, the sideways glances, the eye rolls. She knew she was different, and to her classmates, that was something to mock. "Yo, Kelsey, what you doing? You practicing your MJ moves again?" A voice called out, and Kelsey felt a sharp tug at her stomach. She turned to see Jason, a guy from her math class, leaning against the locker, a smirk playing at the corner of his lips. Jason was part of the popular crowd, the group that everyone seemed to gravitate toward. His friends were all there too, laughing and joking around as they casually glanced her way. No. Just listening to some music," Kelsey muttered, trying to sound casual as she avoided his gaze. She wasn't in the mood for another round of teasing, especially not from Jason. The group erupted in laughter, as if her discomfort was the punchline to a joke that only they understood. "Yeah, right," Jason continued, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "I bet you're just waiting for your chance to moonwalk through the halls like you're the next Michael Jackson. What is it, Kelsey? The king of pop is your hero or something?" Kelsey's face burned with embarrassment. She wanted to tell them they were wrong, to stand up for herself, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she muttered something under her breath and quickly gathered her things. As she walked away, she could feel their eyes on her, and the laughter continued to echo in her ears. She had learned to ignore most of the teasing over the years, but today felt different. The sting of Jason's words lingered in her mind as she walked down the hallway, her head held low. She didn't belong here. Not really. Kelsey had always been the quiet one, the girl who kept to herself and never caused a scene. But there was always this part of her, this spark inside, that wanted to shout from the rooftops about her love for pop music. She wanted to dance like MJ, sing along to every Britney song, and wear the same glittery jackets they wore in the music videos. But every time she considered it, a voice in her head reminded her, "That's not who you're supposed to be." And that voice was never quiet. At home, things were different. Her mom, Regina Johnson, was everything to her. A single mother who worked 2 jobs just to make sure Kelsey had everything she needed, Regina always told her to be proud of who she was. "Don't let anyone make you feel less than you are, Kelsey," she would say, her hands always busy with one task or another. But sometimes, even with her mom's encouraging words, Kelsey couldn't shake the feeling of isolation. She loved her mom's support, but it wasn't the same as being accepted by her peers. She couldn't understand why her love for pop music made her feel so different from everyone else. Kelsey dropped her backpack on the couch as soon as she got home, collapsing beside it with a deep sigh. She had tried to shake off the comments from earlier, but they clung to her like a heavy weight. She pulled out her earbuds and turned on her phone, selecting one of her favorite Michael Jackson songs. Billie Jean blared through the headphones, and for a moment, she allowed herself to get lost in the music. Michael Jackson had always been her escape. His music made her feel like she could do anything. It was more than just dancing, it was about confidence, about breaking free from whatever held you back. Kelsey often practiced his moves in front of the mirror at home, trying to nail the famous moonwalk, or imitate the way he glided across the stage. She had never performed in front of anyone, though. Not yet. As the music played, Kelsey's body instinctively began to move. Her feet tapped to the rhythm, and her hands followed along, imitating the smooth, precise motions she had seen on TV. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the music take over. She had never felt more free than when she was dancing, when she was in her own world, completely lost in the beat. But the moment was broken by a voice, her mom's, calling from the kitchen. "Kelsey. Dinner's almost ready. Come on, help me set the table." Reluctantly, Kelsey pulled the earbuds from her ears and stood up. She gave herself one last glance in the mirror, seeing the determination in her eyes. Maybe one day, she thought, she would be able to dance like that in front of an audience. But for now, she was just a girl in a small town, trying to find her place. That night, as Kelsey sat at the dinner table, her mind wandered back to the teasing at school. She picked at her food, her thoughts racing. What if she wasn't meant to fit in? What if pop music was just part of who she was, and maybe, just maybe, that was okay? Her mom noticed her silence and asked, "What's on your mind, sweetie?" "Nothing, just school stuff," Kelsey answered quickly, not wanting to worry her. She didn't want to burden her mom with the thoughts swirling in her head. But Regina, as always, saw through her daughter's facade. "You know, Kelsey, it's okay to be different. I know you're having a tough time fitting in, but I want you to remember something, being you is the best thing you can be. Don't ever change that for anyone." Kelsey smiled softly, grateful for her mom's wisdom, but still unsure of how to apply it to her everyday life. It was easy to say, "Be yourself," but much harder to actually do it when the world around you seemed determined to tell you that who you were wasn't good enough. As she finished dinner and retreated to her room, Kelsey couldn't shake the feeling that the road ahead would be even harder. But she also felt something stir inside her, a tiny flicker of hope. Maybe it was time to show the world who she really was. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The next day at school was no better. Kelsey had hoped that maybe the teasing would die down, or that people would forget about her embarrassing moment in the gym, but it seemed the opposite was happening. The moment she stepped into the cafeteria, she could feel the eyes on her. Watching, judging, waiting for her to make a misstep. Her usual spot in the corner, near the window, was taken. It wasn't that she had a chosen spot, but over the years, she'd gotten into the habit of sitting there, away from the crowd, where she could quietly eat and avoid the inevitable stares. But today, the table was already occupied by the popular girls, Tina, Kelly, and Jenna, who had been whispering and giggling ever since Kelsey walked in. Kelsey hesitated for a second before she turned, deciding to sit at an empty spot near the back. She didn't need to hear the whispers that were surely following her, but somehow, they still reached her ears. "You think she still practices that weird dance?" Tina's voice rang across the room. It was loud enough for Kelsey to hear, but quiet enough to not draw attention from the teachers. Tina was the queen bee of the school, the kind of girl who could make or break your reputation in a single word. And today, it seemed like she had her sights set on Kelsey. "I don't know," Kelly replied, her voice dripping with mockery. "But I'd love to see her do that moonwalk in front of everyone. She'd probably break her ankle or something." The laughter that followed made Kelsey want to shrink into herself. Her stomach twisted as she lowered her head, pretending not to hear the taunts. But even as she tried to ignore it, the words sliced through her like glass. Every little jab, every little whisper, was a reminder that she didn't belong. Not in this school, not with these people. She picked at her food, her appetite lost in the wave of humiliation that washed over her. But what hurt the most wasn't just the teasing. It was the fact that Kelsey had known deep down that it would happen. Her love for pop music, for Michael Jackson, had never been something that would endear her to the other kids. At least, not here. By the time lunch was over, Kelsey was ready to escape the suffocating atmosphere of the cafeteria. She grabbed her things and headed to her next class, keeping her head down and her shoulders hunched. The halls felt even colder than usual. She could feel the eyes following her, the murmurs of the other students echoing in her mind. As she walked past the lockers, she heard a familiar voice call out to her. "Hey, Kelsey." She froze for a moment, then turned around to see her best friend, Maya, walking toward her. Maya was the one person who never judged her, the one person who liked her for who she was. She had always been Kelsey's support, the person who would laugh with her at the jokes, not at her. Maya had always understood her love for pop, even when everyone else found it strange. "Hey, Maya," Kelsey said, forcing a smile onto her face. "What's up?" Maya raised an eyebrow as she studied Kelsey's face. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." Kelsey hesitated for a moment, then shrugged. "Just the usual, you know. People are acting like they've never heard of Michael Jackson before." Maya's face softened. "I heard what Tina and her gang were saying at lunch. They're idiots, Kelsey. Don't let them get to you." Kelsey sighed. "I don't know if I can keep ignoring it, Maya. It's getting harder." She looked down at her hands, suddenly feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on her. Maya placed a hand on Kelsey's shoulder. "Listen to me. You're not alone in this. I know it's tough, but who cares if they think your love for pop is weird? You're you, and that's something they'll never understand. You have something special, Kelsey. Don't let them take that from you." Kelsey smiled weakly, appreciating her friend's words, but doubt still lingered in her heart. It was hard to believe in her own uniqueness when it felt like the whole world was telling her she didn't belong. "I wish it was that easy," Kelsey whispered, her voice barely audible. Maya gave her a reassuring squeeze. "You don't have to face this alone. If anyone can show them how amazing Michael Jackson is, it's you." That night, as Kelsey lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind replayed everything that had happened at school. The teasing. The laughter. The whispers. It felt like a broken record that wouldn't stop spinning, reminding her again and again that she was different, and not in a good way. She rolled over to her desk and pulled out her notebook. The familiar pages were filled with sketches of dance moves, lyrics, and choreography she had come up with. Michael Jackson's face stared back at her from the poster on the wall above her desk. She had always wanted to be like him, to dance like him, to feel the freedom that came with expressing herself through movement. But every time she thought about it, the image of her classmates laughing came back to her, and the fear of being laughed at again held her back. She closed her eyes, trying to block out the doubts, the fears, the judgment. Michael Jackson had once said, "The greatest education in the world is watching the masters at work." Kelsey had always felt like she was watching greatness when she saw Michael perform. His movements, his energy, his confidence, he seemed untouchable, like he could do anything and no one could tell him otherwise. What if she could be like that? What if she could show everyone that her love for pop wasn't something to be ashamed of? What if she could dance like Michael Jackson and make them see that being different wasn't a bad thing? A spark of determination flickered in her chest. She wasn't going to let the teasing stop her anymore. She didn't care if people didn't understand her love for pop. She was going to prove them wrong. Tomorrow, she would dance. Tomorrow, she would show the world what she was made of. And for once, she wouldn't hide. The following morning, Kelsey woke up with an energy she hadn't felt in a while. The weight of the teasing still lingered in the back of her mind, but today, it wasn't holding her back. The cool spring air flowed through her open window as she got ready for school, the sunlight casting a soft glow over her room. She had made a decision the night before, today was going to be different. She brushed her teeth with a bit more enthusiasm than usual, choosing an outfit that reflected her personality. A graphic tee with the words King of Pop written across it in bold, metallic letters, paired with a pair of worn jeans and sneakers. She added a light denim jacket, feeling like it might give her the courage she needed. Her mom had always said that dressing for confidence could help boost your mood, and Kelsey needed all the confidence she could muster. When Kelsey entered the kitchen, Regina was already preparing breakfast. Her mom had the kind of energy that could light up a room, and Kelsey admired her strength. Her mother's warm smile greeted her as she set the last plate of scrambled eggs down on the table. "Morning, sweetie. You seem different today. What's going on?" Kelsey hesitated, unsure if she should share her thoughts yet. The decision she had made felt big, but it was still uncertain in her mind. She didn't want to get her mom's hopes up if she didn't follow through. "I'm just thinking about things. You know, with school and everything." Kelsey grabbed a seat at the table, trying to act casual. "Maybe it's time I stop hiding who I really am." Regina paused for a moment, then sat down across from her daughter. "Kelsey, you've got nothing to hide. If anyone has a reason to be proud of who they are, it's you. You've got a big heart, and you shouldn't let anyone make you feel small." Kelsey smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her. Her mom's encouragement meant more than she could express. "I'm gonna try, Mom. I'm gonna dance. Like Michael." Her mother's eyes softened, and she placed a hand on Kelsey's. "I know you can do it, honey. Just remember, it's not about what others think. It's about what you feel when you're dancing. It's your passion. Let it show." Kelsey nodded, taking in her mom's words. She had been holding back for so long, afraid of being judged, but now she realized that it was time to embrace who she was fully, even if it meant standing out. The school day dragged on, each passing hour feeling like a test of her determination. The teasing from yesterday had left a mark on her, but this time, Kelsey kept her head up a little higher. She focused on the task at hand, getting through the day and not letting the whispers distract her. At lunch, she sat by Maya, who immediately picked up on the change in her friend's mood. "So, what's the plan?" Maya asked, taking a bite of her sandwich. "You're not acting like your usual self today. I can tell something's different." Kelsey felt a surge of energy. Maya was the one person who had always been by her side, no matter what. "I'm going to dance today," Kelsey said quietly, almost like a whisper, but the words felt powerful. "I'm going to show everyone that my love for pop is nothing to be ashamed of." Maya's eyes widened with excitement. "Oh my God, Kelsey, that's amazing. You know I'm all in for this. Do it. They need to see how incredible you are." Kelsey chuckled, feeling a bit more confident with Maya's support. "I don't know if I'm ready to do it in front of the whole school yet, but I'll start small. Maybe a few people will notice." Maya gave her a thumbs up. "Baby steps. Just promise me one thing, don't let them crush your spirit. If you start, you've got to finish. No turning back." Kelsey nodded, a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "I won't turn back. I can do this." After school, Kelsey went straight home, feeling the weight of the day's decisions settle in her chest. The gymnasium, with its smooth wood floors and echoing silence, was waiting for her. She had always imagined herself dancing in that space, surrounded by the sharp clapping of shoes against the floor, the rhythm of the music syncing with her movements. She had the whole afternoon to herself, and she knew exactly what she had to do. In the living room, she moved the coffee table aside, giving herself space to move freely. She set up her phone, playing Billie Jean, the song that had first ignited her passion for dance. The opening beat pulsed through the speakers, and Kelsey's heart raced as she stood in the center of the room. At first, it felt awkward. Her feet shuffled, unsure of themselves. The moves she had practiced in front of the mirror felt distant, like someone else's body, not her own. But she pushed through the self-doubt, remembering her mom's words, just dance. Let it show. She remembered Michael's fluidity, the effortless grace with which he moved. She imagined herself as him, feeling the music, letting it guide her, not thinking about anything but the beat. Slowly, her movements began to flow. She glided across the floor, hitting the iconic moonwalk with surprising ease. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. Kelsey felt herself come alive, and for the first time in a long while, she stopped worrying about what others would think. She was no longer the girl who was afraid to dance in front of a crowd. She was the girl who loved pop, who loved Michael Jackson, and who wasn't afraid to show it. The song came to an end, and Kelsey stood there, breathless but exhilarated. She had done it. She had danced, and it felt right. There was a sense of freedom that washed over her, a weight that lifted from her shoulders. She had taken the first step. The next day at school, Kelsey walked through the halls with her head held higher than usual. The whispers were still there, but today, they felt distant, almost insignificant. During lunch, as she sat down at her usual spot with Maya, a few of the kids from her math class walked by. One of them, Chris, who often laughed at her MJ obsession, stopped in front of her. "Hey, Kelsey," Chris said, a smirk on his face. "Heard you were doing some serious moonwalking last night. Maybe you'll teach us some moves." Kelsey's heart pounded in her chest, but instead of shrinking away, she stood tall. "Maybe," she said, with a small but confident smile. "Maybe you'll be the one asking me to teach you one day." Chris blinked in surprise, then chuckled. All right. We'll see about that." As he walked away, Kelsey's smile lingered. The mocking hadn't stopped, but she wasn't going to let it define her. She was ready for whatever came next. Because now, she knew the power of her own voice, and her own dance. Kelsey had never imagined that this day would come so soon. The moment she had dreamed about, the moment when she would take her first real step towards something more, something that felt authentic to who she was now within reach. It all started with an announcement over the school's PA system. "Attention, students." The voice of Mr. Harris, the principal, echoed through the school's halls. "We are excited to announce the first ever talent showcase here at Westwood High. Auditions will be held after school on Friday. Whether it's singing, dancing, or something completely unique, this is your chance to shine. Sign-up sheets are in the cafeteria. Don't miss your moment." Kelsey's heart skipped a beat. The talent showcase. It was an opportunity, no, a challenge. A chance for her to prove to herself and to everyone else that her love for Michael Jackson wasn't just a phase. It was part of who she was. It was also an opportunity to face the fear that had been holding her back. The fear of judgment, the fear of being laughed at. What if her performance was a disaster? What if the crowd mocked her, just like Tina and the others had done before? But then she remembered how it felt last night when she had danced freely in her living room. The music had carried her, and for that brief moment, she wasn't afraid. Kelsey's eyes darted over to Maya, who was sitting beside her in the cafeteria. She could see the excitement in her best friend's eyes, a kind of silent encouragement. "You should do it," Maya said before Kelsey even had a chance to speak. "This is your chance to show them all that you're more than just that girl who likes Michael Jackson. You're amazing, Kelsey. You've got this." Kelsey swallowed hard, her thoughts swirling. It wasn't just about showing the school what she could do. It was about proving to herself that she wasn't going to hide anymore. She was ready to take the stage and let everyone see what she was capable of. With a deep breath, Kelsey stood up and walked toward the sign-up sheet. Her hand hesitated for a moment before she signed her name at the very bottom, alongside a few others who had already signed up. It was official now. She had committed. Friday arrived faster than Kelsey expected. The week had felt like a blur, with every day dragging on as she waited for the auditions to come. She had spent hours in her room, practicing in front of the mirror, working on perfecting the moonwalk, the spins, and the iconic smooth moves that had made Michael Jackson the king of pop. But no matter how much she practiced, the nerves gnawed at her. Her stomach felt like it had 1,000 butterflies fluttering around in it, and her palms were slick with sweat. At lunch, Maya noticed the tension in Kelsey's demeanor. "You okay?" she asked, eyeing her friend with concern. "I don't know, Maya. I'm freaking out a little," Kelsey admitted, her voice low. "What if I mess up? What if people think I'm just a joke?" Maya reached across the table and grabbed Kelsey's hand. "You're not a joke. You're a force. I've seen how you dance. You're incredible, Kelsey. And if anyone can nail this audition, it's you. Just remember why you're doing this. It's not for them. It's for you. Don't let their negativity get to you." Kelsey nodded, trying to steady her breathing. Maya was right. She wasn't doing this to impress anyone or to make them like her. She was doing this because she loved Michael Jackson's music. Because it made her feel alive. Because it was who she was. After school, Kelsey made her way to the gymnasium for the auditions. The air was thick with excitement, and the gymnasium buzzed with students laughing, chatting, and nervously pacing back and forth. Kelsey felt the weight of the moment sink in as she walked inside. There were other performers, some of them with instruments, others with voices that rang through the air like birdsong. It was both intimidating and exhilarating at the same time. But Kelsey kept her focus. She had a goal, and she was going to make it happen. She found her name on the sign-up sheet, and with a quick breath, she walked to the far side of the gym, where the audition area had been set up. A small stage had been built, complete with a microphone stand and a simple sound system. The stage was surrounded by folding chairs, where a group of students sat, chatting nervously, waiting for their turn. Her palms were clammy as she stood in line, waiting for her turn. She had never felt so exposed in her life. And then, she heard a voice call her name. Kelsey. The gym teacher, Mrs. Graves, waved her over. "You're up next." Kelsey took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest as she made her way to the stage. As she stepped onto the wooden platform, the room fell silent. All eyes were on her, and for a moment, she felt her knees buckle. It wasn't too late to back out. She could just walk off and pretend this never happened. But then, Kelsey remembered what her mom had said. Let it show. She took another deep breath and stood up straighter. The music started, the unmistakable opening of Billie Jean. The iconic bass line filled the room, and the familiar rhythm took over her body. Her feet moved on their own, gliding across the floor. The nervousness that had gripped her earlier seemed to dissolve as she lost herself in the music. She could feel every step, every turn, every subtle movement of her body. She was no longer just Kelsey, the girl who was mocked for loving pop music. She was Kelsey, the girl who could dance like Michael Jackson. She hit every move perfectly. The moonwalk flowed effortlessly across the floor. Her body spun with precision. Her arms followed the rhythm, and her face lit up with the joy of the music. The crowd, once quiet and unsure, began to murmur in approval. Kelsey's nerves had turned into energy, and she poured everything into her performance. By the time the song ended, she was breathless, but she was smiling. The gym was silent for a moment, and Kelsey stood still, waiting for a response. And then, the applause came. It started slowly, tentative clapping from a few people, unsure if they were seeing what they thought they were seeing. But as more people joined in, the applause grew louder, more genuine. Kelsey's heart raced as she realized what had just happened. She had done it. She had danced her heart out, and they had seen it. As she left the stage, Maya was waiting for her at the edge, her face beaming. "You were amazing, Kelsey. That was incredible." Kelsey laughed, feeling the weight of the moment finally lift off her shoulders. "I think I actually did it," she said, still processing what had just happened. You didn't just do it, you nailed it, Maya grinned. I think the whole school just got a new fan of Michael Jackson. And for the first time in a long while, Kelsey felt like she belonged. Not because she was trying to fit in, but because she had embraced who she was. Kelsey couldn't wipe the smile off her face as she walked out of the gymnasium. The applause from her performance still echoed in her ears, and the adrenaline from the audition pulsed through her veins. She had done it. She had stood in front of a crowd and danced her heart out, just like Michael Jackson. The moment she stepped outside, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out to see a text from Maya. You were incredible. I knew you had it in you. Let's celebrate tonight. You, me, pizza, and Thriller marathon. What do you say? Kelsey couldn't help but laugh as she typed back a quick response, I'm in. I need to process all this first, but I'm totally down. Just as she sent the message, Kelsey's phone buzzed again. This time, it was from Chris. Kelsey, that was sick. Never thought you had moves like that. Seriously, you might be the best dancer I've seen. I'm eating my words. Her stomach flipped. Chris. The same guy who had teased her about her love for pop music. The one who had snickered when she mentioned Michael Jackson. Kelsey read the message again, just to be sure. It wasn't a joke. He was actually complimenting her. For a moment, she wasn't sure what to do. Was this genuine? Or was he just trying to get in her good graces after seeing her performance? Either way, something shifted. The old Kelsey would have ignored the message or dismissed it as just another way to mock her. But today, she felt different. Today, she was confident, because she had done what she loved, and she had earned the respect she now had. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. Glad you liked it, she texted back. It was simple, but it felt right. As Kelsey walked through the crowded halls, she noticed a change. People weren't whispering behind her back. Instead, they were giving her nods of approval, a glance here and there, some even smiling at her. The atmosphere felt lighter, more respectful. And though she still felt a lingering sense of discomfort at being the center of attention, Kelsey couldn't ignore the flicker of pride in her chest. When she arrived home later that evening, the feeling of triumph still hadn't worn off. Her mom greeted her at the door with a bright smile, as if she had already known everything that had happened. How'd it go, sweetie? Regina asked, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. Kelsey grinned and threw her arms around her mom. It was amazing, Mom. They liked it. The whole school was clapping. I can't believe it. Regina hugged her tightly. I knew you had it in you. I'm so proud of you, Kelsey. You've been holding back for too long, but you're finally free to be yourself. You did something so special today. Kelsey felt the weight of her mother's words sink in. She had spent so much of her life worrying about fitting in, about pleasing others. But today, she had simply been herself, and it had been enough. Not only had it been enough, but it had been celebrated. Thanks, Mom, Kelsey whispered, a lump forming in her throat. She hadn't realized how much she needed to hear that. That night, as promised, Maya arrived at Kelsey's house with a bag of pizza and a stack of Michael Jackson DVDs. The two of them sat up on the couch, eating slices of pepperoni pizza and reminiscing about their childhood love for the king of pop. I can't believe you did it, Kelsey, Maya said between bites of pizza. You literally turned that gym into your stage. I mean, I knew you could dance, but that performance was something else. Kelsey laughed. I was terrified at first, but once I started dancing, it was like everything else just disappeared. I wasn't thinking about anything except the music. And I finally felt like, me, you know. Maya nodded, her eyes full of pride. That's exactly it. You were so you out there. And the best part? They saw you. Not just your moves, but you. That's what makes it so powerful. The sound of the opening beats of Thriller filled the room as the movie started. Kelsey snuggled into the couch, her mind still racing with the day's events. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like an outsider. She didn't feel like she had to apologize for her love of pop music or her obsession with Michael Jackson. She had stepped into her own spotlight, and it felt incredible. As the iconic music video for Thriller played on screen, Kelsey felt a surge of inspiration. She wanted more. She wanted to share this feeling with others. She wanted to teach people that it was okay to be different, to love what you loved, no matter what anyone else thought. But most of all, she wanted to keep dancing, to keep pushing herself further, to never stop. The next day at school, the buzz about the talent showcase continued. Kelsey couldn't walk through the halls without hearing people mention her name. Some were still surprised by her performance, others were praising her dancing, and even a few students who had previously mocked her were acknowledging her talent. But it wasn't just about the approval from others, it was the fact that Kelsey had taken a chance on herself, and it had paid off. During lunch, she found herself sitting with Maya again. They had just sat down when a familiar face approached their table. It was Chris. "Hey, Kelsey," he said with a sheepish smile. "You, did amazing yesterday. I wanted to apologize for making fun of you before. I didn't know you had it in you." Kelsey raised an eyebrow. She hadn't expected this. She had almost forgotten how much Chris used to tease her about her love for pop music, but now, he was standing in front of her, acknowledging her talent with sincerity. "It's cool," Kelsey said with a shrug, trying to act casual. "I get it. But now you know. And thanks for the compliment." Chris nodded, looking genuinely humbled. "Yeah, seriously. I just wanted to say that. You've earned a lot of respect from me. Keep doing your thing." And with that, Chris walked away, leaving Kelsey to process what had just happened. Maya leaned over and whispered, "See? Told you they'd come around. You just had to show them who you are." Kelsey smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. She wasn't just earning the respect of her classmates. She was earning her own respect. And that, she realized, was all that mattered. The days following the talent showcase felt like a whirlwind. Kelsey could barely keep up with the flood of attention she was getting. At first, it was strange, people she barely knew, even a few of the popular crowd, would wave at her in the hallways or give her a nod of approval. It wasn't just the normal high school small talk, there was a shift in the air. The snickers she used to hear behind her back had stopped. Instead, there was respect. Respect for who she was, for what she had done. But even as the praise poured in, Kelsey felt a growing pressure. Her performance had been incredible, but now, she had to figure out what came next. It wasn't just a one-time thing. This feeling, this high, wasn't something she was willing to let go of. That weekend, Kelsey sat down with Maya at her kitchen table, both of them surrounded by piles of homework and half-empty mugs of coffee. Maya was flipping through a magazine, clearly distracted by a feature on the hottest dance crews in the city. "What do you think about this?" Maya asked, holding up the magazine. "Do you think we could pull something like this off here?" Kelsey glanced at the magazine. It was an article about a popular dance crew that had gained national attention, featuring their routines, their style, and the way they had worked together to create something special. "You mean, like starting a dance crew?" Kelsey asked, her voice filled with uncertainty. Maya nodded enthusiastically. "Why not? You already killed it at the talent showcase. You've got the moves, and we've got a group of people who would totally be down to join. I mean, think about it, this could be huge. We could make a name for ourselves." The idea hung in the air for a moment, and Kelsey's mind began to race. Could she do it? Could she really take this further? It wasn't just about her anymore. Maya was right. The whole school had seen her performance, and now, the idea of creating something bigger, something with a team, didn't seem so impossible. But Kelsey had to ask herself, was she ready to commit to something that would make her even more visible? The thought made her stomach twist, but the excitement bubbling up inside her made her push past the fear. Okay, yeah. Let's do it, Kelsey said, her voice gaining confidence. We can start small, maybe with a few people from school who are interested. We'll need to practice, get our routines together, maybe film a few videos to show people what we're capable of. Maya grinned, already pulling out her phone. I'm on it. Let's get the word out. The next few weeks were a blur of planning, organizing, and gathering a group of dancers. Kelsey had never realized how many people shared her love for dance. Some of them, like Chris, were familiar faces she'd seen around school. Others were quieter students who had, for the most part, kept their passion for dancing under wraps. There was Aaron, a guy from the soccer team who had serious footwork skills, Tiffany, who had a sharp, energetic style that could match any challenge, and even two shy girls, Jasmine and Layla, who had been known for their ballet backgrounds but secretly wanted to try something more urban and expressive. Before long, Kelsey had a small but dedicated group of dancers. They practiced in an old gymnasium after school, where no one else would disturb them. They'd lock the doors, turn up the music, and lose themselves in the rhythm. Every practice session was an adventure. Kelsey felt the exhilaration of being a part of something bigger than herself. She wasn't just dancing alone anymore, she was leading a group, pushing them to reach new heights. And they were doing it together. No one mocked each other. No one judged. It was a safe space, where everyone could experiment, fail, and try again. The more time Kelsey spent in this new world, the more she realized how much it was changing her. She wasn't just the girl who liked Michael Jackson anymore. She was a leader. A creator. Someone who inspired others to take risks, to break out of their shells, to be seen. And in return, she felt herself growing stronger, more confident with every practice. Then, one afternoon, Kelsey got a message that caught her off guard. It was from none other than Tina, the girl who had made her life miserable for so long. The same Tina who had once mocked her for loving pop music, for being different. Kelsey almost didn't want to open the message, but she did. Hey, Kelsey. Can we talk? I'm sorry for how I treated you before. I know I wasn't kind, and I realize now that I was wrong. You've got something special. I'd like to apologize and maybe make things right. Kelsey stared at the screen, her mind spinning. She had never expected this. Tina, of all people, was apologizing. It felt surreal. It had been months since Tina had taunted her for her love of Michael Jackson, for everything she was passionate about. And now, Tina was reaching out with an apology. Kelsey took a deep breath, trying to process what was happening. Could she forgive her? She didn't know yet. It was hard, because so much had happened between them, so much hurt. But at the same time, she had to admit that she wasn't the same person anymore. She had changed. She had grown stronger. She had learned to forgive herself for caring so much about what others thought. Maybe it was time to forgive Tina too, not for Tina's sake, but for her own peace of mind. After a moment, Kelsey typed her response. Thanks, Tina. I appreciate the apology. I'm not sure I can just forget everything, but I'm willing to talk. She hit send, then set the phone down, trying to push the situation out of her mind. There would be time to sort through all of this later. Right now, she had to focus on her team, on her next steps. By the time the school talent show rolled around again, Kelsey's dance crew, now named the Rhythm Rebels, was ready. They had spent weeks refining their routine, building their own style, blending influences from Michael Jackson with their own unique flair. It was a mix of pop, hip-hop, and contemporary moves, creating a dynamic performance that no one would be able to forget. The night of the talent show, the gymnasium was packed, and there was a buzz in the air. Kelsey could hear the whispers as she and her crew made their way backstage. Everyone was curious about what they had prepared. Some of the students, especially those who had never seen them perform, still couldn't believe they were actually a dance crew. "I can't wait to see what they do," Chris said to Maya, his voice loud enough for Kelsey to hear as they walked past. "Kelsey's got serious talent. This is going to be amazing." Maya gave Kelsey a confident smile. "You ready to show them what you're made of?" Kelsey's heart raced. This was it. No more hiding. No more second-guessing. She was ready to take the stage, they were ready to take the stage. The Rhythm Rebels were about to show everyone what they were capable of. As they waited in the wings, Kelsey felt a surge of pride. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about the entire crew, about every person who had ever felt like they didn't belong, about every person who had ever been told they couldn't be who they truly were. Tonight, they would show them all. The gymnasium buzzed with energy as the crowd grew louder, the bleachers filling with excited students and parents eagerly awaiting the night's performances. Kelsey stood backstage, her palms clammy, heart pounding in her chest. The cool air of the gym did nothing to calm her nerves. She could hear the distant echoes of music, the thud of bass, as the other acts performed before them. It felt like an eternity waiting for their turn. "You okay?" Maya asked, her voice low, but filled with the familiar warmth that Kelsey had grown to rely on. Kelsey looked over at her friend, who was stretching beside her, tapping her foot to an unheard beat. Maya was the picture of calmness, but Kelsey could see the fire in her eyes. She had worked just as hard on this performance as Kelsey had, and now, they were both about to prove something to the whole school. "I'm good," Kelsey said, trying to sound confident, but she felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. The stakes felt high. Not just for her, but for her whole crew. She had promised them they would be seen. Now was the time to show everyone who they really were. The crowd's energy swelled as the announcer's voice rang out, calling the next act to the stage. Kelsey's heart skipped a beat. It was their turn. They moved into position, taking their places behind the curtains. Kelsey glanced at each of the crew members, their faces filled with a mixture of nerves and excitement. Aaron cracked his knuckles, Tiffany adjusted her ponytail, and Jasmine and Layla gave each other a last-minute pep talk. They were a family now. A team. No one was standing alone. "All right, Rhythm Rebels," Kelsey whispered to them, her voice steady now, "we've got this. We're not just dancing, we're showing them who we are. Let's make it unforgettable." Maya shot her a grin. "Let's do it." The lights dimmed, the gym falling silent in anticipation. A hush fell over the audience as the first few notes of music echoed through the speakers. Kelsey could feel the tremble in her chest as the beat built, her body moving almost instinctively in rhythm with the pounding bass. The curtains were pulled back, and the crowd's eyes were suddenly on them. They hit their first move in perfect unison, the opening of their routine sharp and precise. The crowd gasped, surprised by the synchronization and energy that immediately filled the space. Kelsey's heart raced as she felt the power of the music take over. Every beat, every step felt like it was moving through her veins. She could feel her crew around her, each of them perfectly in sync, bringing their own flair, their own style to the performance. As they launched into the chorus, Kelsey's thoughts drifted for just a moment to Michael Jackson, the inspiration behind this moment. She imagined his presence, imagined him watching them, his passion for dance flowing through her. She could almost feel the energy he had brought to the stage all those years ago. The routine hit its crescendo. Aaron's footwork was fast and fluid, Tiffany's movements sharp and electrifying, and Jasmine and Layla's ballet-infused styles blended seamlessly with the more urban, hip-hop elements of the choreography. But it was Kelsey at the center that brought it all together. She was in her element now, spinning and sliding across the floor, hitting every move with confidence and grace. The crowd was with them, cheering, clapping, and moving to the rhythm. As the song reached its final chorus, Kelsey's heart seemed to beat in time with the music, her every movement deliberate and powerful. She felt like the world around her was fading away, and all that mattered was this moment, this stage, and this crew that had worked so hard to get here. The final move arrived. It was the signature Michael Jackson spin, a moment where the dancers would lock eyes and give their all. Kelsey twirled, landing with one hand on the floor, then popped back up into the final pose, a bold, dramatic stance with her arm outstretched and her head held high. For a split second, everything was still. The gymnasium, the crowd, even her breath seemed to freeze in that moment. Then the applause erupted, so loud and so intense it was as if the building itself might shake. Kelsey couldn't contain the smile that spread across her face. Her whole body buzzed with the electric energy of the crowd's reaction. She looked over at Maya, who was grinning ear to ear, and then at the rest of the crew, all of them wide-eyed and breathless from their performance. They had done it. They had really done it. Backstage, the crew huddled together, catching their breath, their faces flushed with excitement and sweat. They all exchanged high-fives and laughs, their nerves replaced with the thrill of the performance. Kelsey was still on a high, her adrenaline pumping, but beneath that, she felt something deeper. This wasn't just a performance. This was the start of something bigger. "That was incredible," Aaron said, his voice filled with awe. "We killed that." Kelsey nodded, her chest swelling with pride. "We did. And we're just getting started." The night wasn't over, but as the performances continued, Kelsey couldn't help but hear the buzz around them. People were talking about the Rhythm Rebels. Some students were pointing at them, whispering excitedly about the crew they'd just seen. Even teachers, who had watched the performance from the sidelines, were giving them nods of approval. Kelsey felt herself standing taller with every passing moment. It was all coming together. By the time the talent show came to an end and the winners were announced, Kelsey wasn't surprised when the Rhythm Rebels were called up to the stage. It wasn't just about the trophy or the recognition, it was about the feeling of validation, of finally being seen for who they were. The crew had put their hearts into that performance, and the crowd had noticed. As Kelsey stood on stage, the lights bright above her, the rest of her crew gathered around her, their smiles wide, their hands clapping as they took the trophy. It was a moment she would never forget. Later that evening, as the crew gathered at Kelsey's house to celebrate, the mood was electric. Pizza boxes were scattered across the table, and everyone was talking at once, rehashing every moment of the performance, laughing and joking with each other. It felt like they had truly become a family, united by their passion for dance, their shared struggles, and their triumphs. "I can't believe we just won," Tiffany said, holding up a slice of pizza. "This is crazy." Maya laughed, raising her own slice in a mock toast. "Here's to the Rhythm Rebels, the most amazing crew in the world." Kelsey grinned, but as she looked around at the faces of her friends, her crew, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. They had all come together because of something simple but powerful, dance. It had brought them together, united them, and helped them rise above the judgment and the teasing they had once faced. "Here's to us," Kelsey said softly, raising her drink in a toast. "To being who we are, no matter what anyone else thinks." The room fell silent for a moment, and then everyone erupted into cheers. It was their moment. And it was just the beginning. The weeks following their big win at the talent show were a blur of practice sessions, social media buzz, and new opportunities. Kelsey and her crew had officially earned their place in the spotlight. The Rhythm Rebels were no longer just a high school dance crew, they were becoming something bigger. The city was starting to take notice. But with this newfound attention came new pressures. Kelsey could feel the weight of it as soon as she walked into school that Monday. There were whispers in the hallways, nods of approval, and even more stares. It wasn't like the mocking glances she had received before, this was different. People seemed curious now, maybe even envious. She was the girl who had stood out, who had led her crew to victory. But it wasn't just the students who were paying attention. Teachers, too, had started recognizing her talent. And with that recognition came an unspoken expectation. Hey, Kelsey, I heard your crew is planning on performing at the school assembly next month, one of her classmates, Darren, said as he walked past her at lunch. That's gonna be huge. You guys should totally bring it. Kelsey nodded, feeling the pressure building. The assembly. It was an even bigger stage than the talent show, with a whole school watching. The idea of performing again was both exciting and terrifying. What if they didn't live up to the expectations? Yeah, we're working on it, she said, trying to sound casual. But inside, she was starting to feel the first real seeds of doubt creeping in. What if they couldn't do it again? What if the crowd didn't react the way they had before? At their next practice, Kelsey couldn't shake the nagging thoughts. As they worked through the routine, she noticed that the energy wasn't the same. They were all a little more tired, a little more distracted. Aaron stumbled on a move he usually nailed, Tiffany missed a timing cue, and Jasmine and Layla looked unsure as they attempted a new lift. Hey, what's going on? Kelsey called out, halting the music. We've been practicing this for weeks, and we're still not hitting it right. What's the deal? Everyone paused, looking at each other, unsure of how to respond. I don't know, Tiffany admitted, wiping sweat from her brow. I think we're all just, kind of feeling the pressure. I mean, we won the talent show. We're supposed to be amazing now, right? What if we don't live up to it? I feel that, too, Aaron said, scratching his head. I mean, after that talent show, everyone's expectations are way higher. It's like, what's next? Kelsey exhaled, her shoulders tense. The doubt was spreading, not just within her, but through the whole crew. It wasn't just the performance, it was everything that came with it. The attention, the constant questions about what they'd do next, the need to keep up the momentum. We're overthinking this, Kelsey said, trying to steady her nerves. We've got this. We just need to go back to what made us us. We need to focus on what we love about dancing, not what people expect. But the truth was, Kelsey wasn't sure she believed it herself. The pressure was real. They had set the bar high, and now it felt like every step they took was under a magnifying glass. The last thing she wanted was to disappoint her crew, or worse, herself. She could feel the weight of responsibility pressing on her shoulders. What if they weren't ready for what was coming? Let's take a break, Kelsey said after a long silence. Let's just chill for a bit and regroup. We'll come back to it with fresh eyes. The crew nodded, their faces still filled with uncertainty but willing to follow her lead. Kelsey took a seat on the bleachers, watching her team scatter across the gym, chatting and stretching. She couldn't help but wonder if they were all feeling the same thing she was, the fear of failing after such a high. The fear of not being enough. Later that evening, as Kelsey lay in bed, staring up at the ceiling, the thoughts wouldn't stop. She'd promised Maya, promised everyone, that this was just the beginning. But what if it wasn't? What if they couldn't keep this up? What if the spotlight turned on them only to reveal that they were just a flash in the pan, that their success at the talent show was a one-hit wonder? She rolled over and grabbed her phone. There was a message from Maya, the screen lighting up in the dark room. Hey, Kelsey. I know things have been a little tense lately, but we've got this. Remember why we started. You brought us all together because you believed in something bigger than just dancing. We're a team. And no matter what happens, we're in this together. Kelsey smiled, feeling a wave of relief wash over her. Maya was right. She had to stop overthinking and trust her crew, trust herself. They had come this far because they believed in each other, because they were more than just dancers, they were a family. She typed a quick reply, "Thanks, Maya. I needed that. Let's do this. For us." Kelsey closed her eyes, letting the words settle in her mind. She was the leader of this crew, but that didn't mean she had to carry the weight alone. They had each other, and together, they could handle anything. The fear was normal, but it didn't have to control them. It was time to shake off the doubt and reclaim their passion. The next day, Kelsey called for an impromptu practice after school. She wasn't going to wait any longer. She needed to get back to what they loved, what made them feel alive. No more worrying about expectations. No more second-guessing. When the crew gathered in the gym, there was a renewed sense of purpose in the air. Everyone seemed to have shaken off their doubts, and Kelsey could feel the difference. The moment the music started, the energy shifted. They were alive again. Every step, every beat felt like it was flowing from the heart. "Let's get this right, no matter what," Kelsey said, smiling as she watched them all focus, coming back to life. "We're going to do this for us. For the love of it. And when we step out there for the assembly, we're going to show them how it's done." They practiced harder than ever, pushing through their insecurities, taking risks, and exploring new moves. And by the time the session ended, Kelsey could feel it. They had found their rhythm again. They weren't just a team anymore, they were a force. The day of the assembly arrived quickly, and with it came a fresh wave of anticipation. The school's gymnasium was filled with students chatting excitedly as teachers guided them to their seats. Kelsey stood backstage once again, her heart pounding, but this time, it was different. She wasn't nervous anymore. She had her crew, and they were ready. "I'm proud of you all," Kelsey said, her voice steady and strong as she addressed the crew. "Let's show them what we're made of. This is our time." As they waited for their cue, Kelsey felt the weight of the moment in a new way. It wasn't about impressing anyone anymore. It was about being true to themselves and dancing for the love of it. No expectations. No pressure. Just them. The curtains parted, and the music blared. The rhythm rebels stepped onto the stage, their hearts beating as one. And this time, they weren't just performing. They were living the moment. The gymnasium was packed. The bleachers were filled with students, parents, and teachers, all eagerly awaiting the assembly to begin. The air was thick with anticipation, and the usual murmur of students settling into their seats was drowned out by the music playing over the loudspeakers. Kelsey stood backstage with the rhythm rebels, her fingers trembling slightly as she adjusted her outfit. Her heart was pounding in her chest, but this time, it wasn't fear that gripped her, it was the electric anticipation of what was to come. "Are you all ready?" Kelsey asked, her voice steady, though her mind was racing. She wasn't sure if she was speaking to the crew or herself. "Born ready," Maya grinned, adjusting her headband as she bounced lightly on her toes. "Let's show them who we are." Kelsey smiled, but inside, she felt a swirl of nerves mixed with excitement. It had been weeks since their last performance, but this felt different. This wasn't just another talent show or competition. This was a chance to solidify their place as a true dance crew. This was about proving to everyone, especially the doubters, that the rhythm rebels were here to stay. And the pressure was suffocating. She glanced over at the rest of the crew. Aaron, usually the most confident, was fidgeting with his sleeves. Tiffany was stretching, but Kelsey noticed the tension in her shoulders. Jasmine and Layla were whispering to each other, their faces serious, like they were silently reminding each other to give their best. The crew had been practicing non-stop, but even with all the hours they'd put in, Kelsey could sense something was off. They weren't just nervous, they were weighed down by something she couldn't quite pinpoint. Kelsey's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the announcer's voice booming over the speakers. "Next up, we have the Rhythm Rebels. Give it up for them." The curtain opened, and the bright lights hit them like a wave. The crowd's applause was deafening, and for a moment, it felt like time slowed. Kelsey could feel every pair of eyes on her, the weight of expectations pressing on her chest. She stole a glance at Maya, who winked at her, and suddenly, all the pressure melted away. They had made it this far together, and they weren't about to stop now. The music started. The bass kicked in, and Kelsey felt the rhythm deep in her bones. This was their moment. She led them onto the stage with the familiar energy they'd worked so hard to perfect. As they began their routine, the energy surged between them, and for a few minutes, the outside world faded away. They were in sync, moving as one unit, every step and every beat flowing naturally. The crowd was mesmerized, and Kelsey couldn't help but feel a sense of pride swell in her chest. But something unexpected happened. As they neared the middle of the routine, Kelsey saw it. Aaron stumbled on a jump, his foot catching the edge of the floor. It wasn't major, he quickly recovered, but Kelsey felt the shift. It wasn't just a mistake, it was a crack in their perfect performance. She saw Tiffany falter for just a second, too, and Jasmine's face tightened. The energy between them seemed to falter, just for a heartbeat. For a split second, Kelsey's mind raced. Was this it? Were they going to fall apart right here, in front of everyone? What would they think if they didn't finish strong? What would she think? The music hit a new beat, and Kelsey pushed those thoughts away. She couldn't let herself fall into doubt. This was their moment. She glanced over at Maya, who was still dancing with fire, and Kelsey drew strength from her. This wasn't the time to fall apart. They were a team. They always had been. And that was more important than any misstep or mistake. Focus, Kelsey whispered to herself, but the words felt like a promise. A reminder. She pushed through. As they neared the final stretch, the moves began to flow again. The energy lifted, the momentum returned, and the crowd responded. Their timing was flawless in the last few seconds. Kelsey led them into their signature final pose, her body in perfect form, eyes locked on the audience, and the music fading out to thunderous applause. The crew didn't even have to look at each other to know what they'd done. They had made it. The performance was a success, despite the hiccups, despite the nerves. They had come together and finished strong, proving that they could handle anything. As the lights dimmed and the crowd's applause rang in her ears, Kelsey allowed herself a deep breath. The crew surrounded her, and they exchanged high fives, smiles, and looks of shared relief. No words were needed, the unspoken understanding was enough. They had done it. And no matter how close they came to losing their rhythm in the middle of the performance, they had pulled through together. Later that day, as the school bell rang and students filed out of the gym, Kelsey couldn't shake the adrenaline rush. She had promised herself that she wouldn't let doubt win, and she hadn't. But as she made her way toward the exit, she couldn't ignore the nagging thought in the back of her mind. There was still so much to prove. The pressure had only intensified with their success, and now that they had shown their talent on such a big stage, it felt like the stakes were even higher. She saw the way people were looking at her now. They weren't just seeing the girl who had won a talent show, they were seeing the girl who led the most talked about dance crew in the school. Everyone was watching, waiting for the next move. What would the Rhythm Rebels do next? What's next for us, Kelsey? Maya's voice cut through her thoughts, and Kelsey turned to find her friend walking beside her, her expression serious. Kelsey let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. I don't know, Maya. I feel like we've got more to give, but I'm not sure where to go from here. Maya smiled and slapped her on the back. We'll figure it out. We always do. I just don't want to disappoint anyone, Kelsey admitted, her voice quieter now. What if this was as good as it gets? What if we can't top this? Maya's smile softened, and she stopped walking, turning to face Kelsey. Kelsey, we've already topped it. It's not about the next performance. It's about what we do after. This is just the beginning. Kelsey met her eyes, and for the first time in days, she felt a spark of hope. They were right. They didn't need to top what they'd just done. They just needed to keep doing what they loved, keep growing together, and keep pushing the boundaries of what they could achieve. As the days passed, Kelsey found herself thinking more and more about what Maya had said. The crew had already proven themselves. Now it was time to focus on the journey ahead, not the pressure to be perfect. It was time to take the next step. And whatever that step was, the Rhythm Rebels would face it together. The weeks after the school assembly were a whirlwind of activity for the Rhythm Rebels. It wasn't just that they had earned recognition at school, but word of their performance spread like wildfire. Videos of their routine, posted by students on social media, went viral. They had officially become the talk of the town. People were excited, curious, and, most of all, impressed. Despite the buzz surrounding them, Kelsey couldn't shake a feeling of unease that lingered just beneath the surface. They had proven themselves in the gym, but what would happen when they faced a new challenge? What if it wasn't enough this time? The idea of performing in front of more people, maybe even on a professional stage, started to feel both exhilarating and terrifying. One afternoon, Kelsey sat in her bedroom, scrolling through her phone, watching video clips of their performance over and over again. Every time she saw it, she felt the rush of pride in herself, her crew, and the bond they had built. But there was still a nagging question in the back of her mind: what's next? Her thoughts were interrupted by a text from Maya. "Hey, Kels. We need to talk. Let's meet at the park after school." Kelsey's heart skipped a beat. Maya's messages were always straightforward, but the urgency in this one made her curious. What was going on? Later that afternoon, Kelsey met Maya at their usual spot near the swings. Maya was already there, sitting with her feet on the ground, kicking lazily at the gravel beneath her. When Kelsey walked over, Maya looked up and gave her a small smile, but there was something different in her expression, something serious. "What's up?" Kelsey asked, taking a seat beside her. "You're making me nervous with that look." Maya chuckled lightly, but her eyes remained intense. "I've been thinking, Kelsey. About us. About what we've done so far." Kelsey raised an eyebrow. "We've done pretty well, right?" Maya nodded slowly. "Yeah, we've done more than anyone expected. But here's the thing. We can't just keep going like this. We've hit a milestone, but we need to push past it. I don't want to be stuck in high school forever, Kelsey. I want to make something real out of this. I want us to make it." Kelsey blinked, surprised by the force of Maya's words. "You're talking about, what? Like, doing this professionally? You know that's not something we can just jump into, right? We're not even close to being ready for that." Maya's gaze was unwavering. "I know, but we have the talent. We have the drive. We've already shown that. What if we took this seriously, like really seriously? What if we started performing outside of school, doing competitions, getting exposure? What if we turned the Rhythm Rebels into something more?" Kelsey was quiet for a moment, processing what Maya was saying. She had thought about it, dreamed about it, actually, but always dismissed the idea as too far-fetched. Being part of a professional dance crew wasn't something that just happened. It was a long road of struggle, competition, and rejection. And yet, Maya was right. There was something undeniable about the way they moved together. They had something special. But how would we even get started? Kelsey asked, her voice tinged with doubt. "We'd need money, a manager, a whole plan. It's not just about dancing, it's about business, too." "I've been thinking about that, too," Maya said, her eyes lighting up. "There are local competitions coming up soon. We can start by entering those, get our name out there. We'll have to hustle, but we can do it. We can build the right connections, and then we'll start getting offers. If we push ourselves, if we take this to the next level, I believe we can make something happen." Kelsey felt a spark of excitement flicker in her chest, followed quickly by a swell of fear. What if it didn't work? What if they failed? But then she remembered the rush of their last performance, the way it felt to be on that stage, dancing as one unit. That had to count for something. They had to at least try. I think we could do it," Kelsey said finally, her voice steady but with a hint of vulnerability. But we have to be all in. No half measures. Maya nodded, her face breaking into a wide grin. Exactly. All in. No turning back. Over the next few weeks, the rhythm rebels threw themselves into the idea of going professional. They began researching local dance competitions, and even started planning how they could fund their entry fees and travel expenses. There were countless late nights spent brainstorming, calling venues, and making lists of things they needed. Kelsey had to be more than just a dancer now, she had to become a leader, a manager, a strategist. But every challenge was met with a collective determination. There was no turning back now. The crew was on board, too. Aaron, who had initially been hesitant about the pressure of taking things to the next level, was now more than excited. Tiffany was all in, and even Jasmine and Layla, who had their reservations, were beginning to see the potential of what they could achieve. Kelsey found herself growing more confident as they mapped out their journey. Each step felt like a small victory. The crew wasn't just a group of dancers anymore, they were a team, and they were building something together. A few weeks later, their first big opportunity arrived. They had managed to scrape together enough funds to enter a regional dance competition. It wasn't a huge event, but it was an important one. It would be their first taste of real competition, their chance to see where they stood in a world outside of high school. As Kelsey stared at the email confirmation, her pulse quickened. This was it. This was their shot. But there was also a part of her that was terrified. This wasn't the talent show. This wasn't just about putting on a good performance for their friends and family. This was real. And what if they weren't ready? What if they failed? But as she looked at the faces of her crew, gathered around her in the living room, their eyes filled with excitement and nerves, Kelsey knew that she had made the right decision. This wasn't just a dream anymore, it was happening. They were going to do this. They were going to make it. We've worked so hard for this moment, Kelsey said, her voice filled with determination. We've got this. Let's show them what we can do. The crew cheered, clapping and high-fiving each other. And just like that, the Rhythm Rebels took their first step into the world of professional dance. The weeks leading up to the regional dance competition were a blur of rehearsals, planning, and adjustments. Kelsey barely had time to think about anything else. Every day after school, she and the crew would meet in the small studio they had rented, each session pushing them closer to perfection. The crew was more focused than ever, but Kelsey could feel the pressure building. This wasn't just a performance, it was their first real test. The outcome of this competition could decide their future. And the stakes were higher than ever. Their routines had evolved. No longer were they just replicating steps and routines from YouTube or what they had seen on TV. Kelsey and the crew had begun to make their style their own, blending influences from pop, hip-hop, and even some contemporary dance moves that felt uniquely the Rhythm Rebels. They had pushed their limits and experimented with choreography that challenged each of them in different ways. But with this progress came friction. Tensions were starting to rise between the crew members. Small disagreements turned into bigger ones. Aaron, the quiet one who usually stayed out of drama, had started speaking up more, and not in the best ways. He was critical of the choreography Kelsey had put together, questioning certain transitions, and sometimes, he'd roll his eyes when things didn't go perfectly. We need to tighten this up, Aaron snapped one day, visibly frustrated as the crew took a break after a long practice session. This part of the routine is sloppy. It's not clean. Tiffany, who had been working herself to exhaustion, shot back, it's not about perfection, Aaron. We're not robots. We're supposed to feel the music. This is about emotion, not just getting every move exactly right. That's easy for you to say. You're not the one leading this team, Aaron retorted, his tone biting. Maybe if you were, you'd understand that there's a bigger picture. The tension in the room was palpable. Kelsey tried to step in, her voice calm but firm. Guys, let's all take a breath. We're all stressed right now. But we're a team. We need to support each other, not tear each other down. For a moment, it felt like the room was stuck in a standstill. But Maya, always the peacemaker, stepped up. Aaron, we know you want things to be perfect. We all do. But we also need to be real with each other. We've been working really hard. This isn't just about being perfect, it's about finding our groove. Kelsey nodded in agreement, but she couldn't help the weight of responsibility that settled over her. As the leader of the crew, it was on her to make these decisions, to smooth over the conflicts, to keep everyone focused. It was becoming harder, though. She was starting to feel like the glue that held everything together, and the strain was starting to show. She wanted this so badly, for herself and for the Rhythm Rebels. But with the increasing demands of managing the crew, the choreography, and the pressure of the competition, it felt like it was getting harder to breathe. As the competition date drew nearer, Kelsey found herself waking up earlier and staying up later. She was constantly reviewing their routines, making small tweaks here and there, and making sure everyone was practicing their individual parts. But no matter how much time she spent, she couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was off. One evening, after a particularly grueling practice, Kelsey stayed behind while the rest of the crew packed up and left. She sat in the corner of the empty studio, watching the mirrors reflect her tired face. She had always known she had it in her to lead the team, but she was starting to question whether she was the right person for the job. What if I'm not good enough for this? What if I've pushed them too hard? Kelsey rubbed her eyes, trying to shake the doubt away. She had come so far, they had come so far. The crew had seen their progress. They had grown stronger, more confident, and more unified with every passing day. They could do this. She just needed to believe in herself the way they believed in her. The door creaked open, and Maya stepped in, her expression soft. "You okay?" she asked gently, taking a seat next to Kelsey. "I don't know," Kelsey admitted, the words coming out more easily than she had expected. I feel like I'm carrying everything on my shoulders. There's so much at stake, Maya. What if we fail?" Maya was silent for a moment, looking at Kelsey with a thoughtful expression. Then, she spoke. "Kelsey, you've led us this far. And we've followed you because we believe in you. We wouldn't be where we are without you. You're the heart of this crew, and that's not something that can just be replaced." Kelsey met Maya's gaze, her chest tightening as she fought back the tears threatening to spill. "But what if it's not enough? What if I'm not enough?" Maya's hand gently squeezed hers. "You're more than enough. You've always been enough. You're not doing this alone, Kelsey. We're all in this together. You don't have to carry all of this weight by yourself." For the first time in weeks, Kelsey felt a sense of relief wash over her. Maya's words were like a lifeline, reminding her of the bond they shared, the friendship, the trust. They weren't just a dance crew, they were a family. "I guess I just needed to hear that," Kelsey whispered, her voice shaky. "Thanks, Maya." Maya smiled softly. "Anytime. Now, let's show them what we're made of." The night before the competition, the crew gathered at Kelsey's house for one final practice session. The energy was electric, everyone putting in their all, fueled by the support they had built over the past few weeks. There were no more doubts, no more second-guessing. They were ready. And when the morning of the competition finally arrived, Kelsey felt a mixture of nervous excitement and quiet determination. The venue was bigger than anything they had ever performed in before. The bright stage lights, the looming audience, the sense of professional-level competition, it was overwhelming. But Kelsey wasn't alone. Her crew was by her side, and they all shared the same goal, to give everything they had, to leave it all on the stage. As Kelsey stood backstage, waiting for their turn to take the stage, she realized something important. This moment, this competition, wasn't about winning. It was about proving to themselves that they were capable of achieving greatness, no matter how tough the road ahead would be. The announcer's voice echoed through the venue, calling their name. "It's time," Kelsey said softly, turning to face the crew. "Let's do this. For the Rhythm Rebels." And with that, they walked on stage together, ready to make their mark. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The stage lights were blinding. Kelsey could feel the heat of them even from the backstage area, their bright glow making the dark corners of the venue seem even more remote and isolating. Her heart was pounding in her chest, and she could hear it in her ears, loud and insistent. The sounds of the audience, the hum of conversation, the slight shuffling of feet, they all seemed so far away. There were only a few moments left before it was their turn to take the stage. It felt like time was moving in slow motion. The minutes stretched, each one feeling like an eternity. Kelsey glanced around at the rest of the crew, seeing the nervous energy mirrored on their faces. Aaron was pacing back and forth, muttering something under his breath. Tiffany stood off to the side, eyes closed, probably visualizing their moves. Layla and Jasmine were chatting quietly, offering each other encouraging words. And Maya, as always, was standing confidently, her eyes locked on Kelsey's, silently reminding her that they were all in this together. "You ready?" Maya asked softly, stepping closer to Kelsey. Her voice was calm, but Kelsey could hear the excitement just underneath. Kelsey took a deep breath, nodding. "Yeah. I'm ready." The music in the background shifted, signaling the next act was about to finish. The tension in the air was thick. Kelsey couldn't remember ever feeling so alive, so full of anticipation. This was the moment they had worked for. The moment that would either make them or break them. "All right, crew. Let's do this," Kelsey said, her voice surprisingly steady. They all nodded, rallying around her. One by one, the crew members clapped each other's backs, offering silent affirmations. This was no longer just about the dance, it was about what they had built. The trust, the bonds, the hours spent rehearsing. They had come so far. It was time to show the world who the Rhythm Rebels were. The curtains parted, and Kelsey felt the heat of the stage lights immediately. The audience's faces were hidden by the brightness, but she could feel their eyes on them, waiting, anticipating. Her heart raced, but she fought the panic that threatened to rise within her. She focused on the music, the beat, the rhythm that had become second nature. The opening notes hit, and they were off. The choreography they had perfected over the past few weeks came to life in front of the audience. Kelsey's body moved with precision, every step in sync with the crew, the music fueling them. The first few seconds of the performance were always the most nerve-wracking, but once she found her rhythm, she felt everything fall into place. She could feel the energy from the crowd, even if she couldn't see their faces. There was a subtle shift in the air as the audience reacted to their first set of moves, surprise, excitement, and then, the unmistakable sound of applause. They were pulling it off. The cheers and gasps fueled their movements, pushing them to work even harder, even faster. As the routine progressed, Kelsey couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. This was no longer just about her leading the group. It was about them all, working as one, moving as one. There was something magical about the way they flowed together, the way each person brought something unique to the performance. Tiffany's powerful moves, Aaron's sharpness, Layla's fluidity, and Jasmine's infectious energy, they all complemented each other perfectly. Midway through, Kelsey could see Maya beside her, locking eyes with her, smiling. It was a small moment, but it felt like everything had come full circle. Maya's silent reassurance told Kelsey that they were doing this. They were making their mark. But then, just as they were about to enter the final sequence, the part where they had all agreed they would give it their all, Kelsey felt something shift. It was Aaron. His movement, which was usually so tight and controlled, faltered. There was a slight stumble. A brief, almost imperceptible hesitation. The briefest moment of uncertainty. Kelsey's heart skipped a beat, but she kept moving. It wasn't enough to ruin the routine, at least, not yet. But it had shaken her. They couldn't afford a mistake now. The next few seconds felt like a blur as Kelsey pushed through the final sequence. She could feel the sweat pouring down her face, but she couldn't let up. This was their moment. The final, explosive move came, and they all hit it, together. Every arm raised, every step timed, every jump synchronized. The audience exploded into applause. As the music cut off and the crew stood in their final pose, frozen for the last beat, Kelsey couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. It was over. They had done it. The applause echoed in her ears, and for a moment, Kelsey stood still, letting the sound wash over her. It wasn't just applause, it was recognition. It was the sound of everything they had worked for finally coming to fruition. Backstage, the crew gathered quickly, their faces flushed with excitement. They were still catching their breath, trying to process what had just happened. Kelsey's heart was still racing, but there was a grin on her face. She turned to Maya, who was smiling as widely as she was. "You did it." "We did it," Maya said, her voice filled with joy. Kelsey couldn't stop smiling. "We did it." But the moment was short-lived. Just as they were about to start celebrating, a voice called out from behind them. "You're up against some tough competition," a smooth voice said. Kelsey turned around to see a tall, well-dressed man approaching them. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes held something else, something more professional, more calculating. It was clear from the way he carried himself that he was someone who knew the dance industry. "I'm sorry?" Kelsey asked, narrowing her eyes. "I'm Jordan Blackwell," the man introduced himself with a sly smile. "I'm one of the judges. And I have to admit, you all were impressive. But this is just the beginning. The real challenge is yet to come. You've got the moves, but what will you do with them?" Kelsey felt a twinge of unease. It wasn't that she wasn't grateful for the feedback, it was just that the words didn't sit well with her. It felt like a challenge. The competition was only beginning, and she knew that they had just taken the first step. But what was next? Jordan continued, "I'll be keeping an eye on you. If you're serious about this, you'll need to work twice as hard. There's a lot more to it than just dancing." And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving Kelsey to process his words. As they gathered in the green room after the performance, Kelsey looked at the crew. They had made it through, and the adrenaline was still running high. But she couldn't ignore the conversation she'd just had with Jordan. "We've done well," she said, her voice steady. "But this is just the beginning." Maya looked at her and nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "We've got a long road ahead, Kelsey. But we're ready for it." Kelsey smiled. "We're more than ready." And with that, they set their sights on the future, whatever it held. They had proven they could do this. Now, they would show the world just how far they could go. The following weeks passed in a whirlwind of rehearsals, late-night discussions, and mounting pressure. Kelsey could feel the weight of it on her shoulders more than ever. The competition was drawing closer, and with each passing day, the stakes seemed to grow higher. They had gotten a taste of the spotlight, but now, there was the promise of something bigger, and a fierce sense of competition that only fueled their hunger to succeed. Every time they walked into the practice studio, there was an unspoken sense of urgency. It wasn't just about getting the moves right anymore. It was about proving that the Rhythm Rebels weren't just another dance crew, they were the crew to watch. Every beat, every step, every formation had to be perfect. But with that perfection came friction. Kelsey could see it in Aaron's eyes. He was still pushing himself, harder than anyone else, but the frustration was starting to show. There were moments when his movements didn't align with the rest of the crew, and the tension between him and the others was palpable. Tiffany, usually the calm one, was visibly exhausted, her patience thinning with each rehearsal. And Layla, who was normally so supportive, had started to become quiet, her usual enthusiasm dampened by the exhaustion of non-stop practice. But the most noticeable change was in Kelsey herself. The pressure was starting to affect her, more than she was willing to admit. Her sleep was restless, her thoughts never fully leaving the dance studio. She began to wonder if she was pushing too hard, if she was pushing them too hard. There were times when she could feel the crew pulling away from her, their smiles less frequent, their words more clipped. It was subtle, but it was there, a quiet undercurrent of doubt and frustration. And Kelsey didn't know how to fix it. One evening, after yet another long practice, Kelsey sat down on the floor of the studio, feeling the coolness of the wooden floor against her skin. The crew had dispersed, heading home for the night, but she couldn't bring herself to leave. She needed a moment of clarity, needed to figure out what was going wrong. As she sat there, trying to collect her thoughts, Maya approached her, her footsteps soft against the floor. "Hey," she said quietly, sitting down next to Kelsey. "You okay?" Kelsey looked up, meeting Maya's concerned gaze. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just, tired, you know." Maya didn't say anything right away. She simply nodded, her eyes studying Kelsey as if she were trying to read her. "You know, you don't have to do this all alone." Kelsey's heart skipped a beat. She had been trying so hard to hold everything together, but the weight of it all was becoming too much. "What do you mean?" Maya's voice was gentle, but firm. "I mean, you're carrying a lot of this by yourself. You're trying to keep everything perfect for the crew, trying to manage every little detail, and it's taking a toll on you." Kelsey opened her mouth to protest, but Maya held up a hand. "I get it. You want this for us. But you don't have to do it alone. We're all in this together, Kelsey. We're a team. And if we're going to make it through this, we need to lean on each other." Kelsey took a deep breath. I don't know if I'm cut out for this. Sometimes I wonder if I'm the right person to lead this crew. Everyone's so stressed, and I can feel the tension building between us. What if I'm the reason things aren't clicking?" Maya placed a hand on her shoulder, her touch warm and reassuring. "Kelsey, you're doing amazing. But you can't carry this on your own. You need to trust us more. Let us help. We're not just your crew. We're your friends. And we've got your back." For the first time in a long while, Kelsey felt a flicker of hope. Maybe she hadn't failed them after all. Maybe there was still a way forward, a way to bring them back together and keep moving toward their goal. "Thanks, Maya," Kelsey whispered, feeling the weight of the past few weeks lift just a little. "I needed to hear that." Maya smiled, her eyes warm with understanding. "Anytime, Kels. Anytime." The next few practices felt different. The energy in the room shifted as Kelsey made a conscious effort to step back a little, to allow the crew to take more ownership of their routines. She encouraged them to offer more feedback, to voice their ideas and concerns. It wasn't easy, and there were still moments of tension, but slowly, things started to feel a little more cohesive. Aaron, in particular, seemed to respond well to the change. With the pressure taken off him, he began to loosen up, his movements becoming more fluid and less rigid. Tiffany, who had been quiet for weeks, opened up during one of their group discussions, sharing her thoughts on how they could make their final routine even more dynamic. Even Layla, who had been distant, started to offer her own creative input, making the routine feel more like a true team effort. By the time the next rehearsal rolled around, the crew was moving in sync in a way they hadn't before. The routine had evolved from something technical into something alive, a true reflection of their bond and their passion for dance. As the competition date grew nearer, Kelsey couldn't help but feel a sense of nervous excitement. They had come so far from where they started, the Rhythm Rebels weren't just a crew anymore, they were a force to be reckoned with. And it wasn't just about winning anymore. It was about showing everyone who they were, proving that they could hold their own in the toughest of competitions. But Kelsey knew there was still a lot of work to be done. They weren't done yet, not by a long shot. And with that thought, she looked around at her crew, their faces full of determination and excitement. They were ready for whatever came next. Because this wasn't just a competition anymore. It was their moment to show the world what they were made of. The day of the competition arrived in a blur. The crew gathered early in the morning at the venue, their nerves palpable but tempered by the sense of unity that had grown between them. They were ready. The entire venue buzzed with the anticipation of the upcoming performances. Other crews milled around, stretching, rehearsing, and strategizing. But Kelsey's focus was laser-sharp. She could hear the chatter of other dancers, the clattering of equipment, but all of it felt distant as she focused on the task at hand. The Rhythm Rebels had made it this far. Now, it was time to give it everything they had. Kelsey turned to the crew. "This is it," she said, her voice steady, but with an undeniable edge of emotion. "We've worked for this. We've earned this. Let's show them who we are." The crew nodded, their faces reflecting the same determination. Together, they were ready. The atmosphere in the competition venue was electric. The air was thick with anticipation, the buzz of excited conversations from other crews filling the space, but Kelsey could barely hear it. Her thoughts were consumed with one thing: the Rhythm Rebels had come this far. They weren't going to let this moment slip away. The crew stood off to the side, huddled together in a small corner of the backstage area. Everyone was stretching, going over last-minute details, and psyching themselves up. But underneath the focused energy, Kelsey could sense the nervousness. Even though they had worked so hard, there was still that lingering doubt: would they be able to pull it off when it truly counted? Kelsey took a deep breath. The weight of the moment was heavy, but she wasn't going to let it crush her. She had learned something important over the past few weeks: this was their time, but it was also about enjoying the process. They'd worked for this, yes. But more importantly, they had built something together. They had a chance to show the world what they could do, and nothing, not the nerves, not the competition, was going to take that away from them. "All right, team," she said, her voice cutting through the buzz in the air. "This is it. No matter what happens, we've already made it farther than we ever thought we would. I'm proud of every one of you." Maya stepped forward, her usual quiet strength resonating through the group. "We've trained for this. We've pushed each other to our limits. Let's show them what the Rhythm Rebels are all about." There was a chorus of nods, and for a moment, the room felt still, a rare moment of calm before the storm. Kelsey looked around at her crew: Aaron, who had finally found his rhythm, his confidence restored; Tiffany, whose precision was now matched by her passion; Layla, the quiet one whose creativity had blossomed; and Jasmine, always full of energy, her infectious spirit lifting everyone up. Together, they were unstoppable. But just as Kelsey was about to turn back toward the stage entrance, she heard someone approach from behind. "Hey, Kelsey," came a familiar voice. It was Jordan Blackwell, the judge who had spoken to her after their performance last time. He had been quiet during the past few weeks, but now, his presence was unmistakable as he stepped toward her. Kelsey turned to face him, trying to keep her composure. "Yes?" she asked, trying to sound casual, though she could feel the anxiety rising in her chest. "I just wanted to say. I hope you're ready," Jordan said, his expression unreadable. "This is the big league. You'll face some serious competition today. You've got talent, no doubt, but talent alone won't win this. You need heart, you need grit. Don't let the pressure get to you." Kelsey swallowed. His words were meant to challenge her, but they also dug under her skin, making her more determined than ever. She didn't want to let him, or anyone, think they were just another crew. The Rhythm Rebels had worked too hard for that. "We're ready," Kelsey replied firmly, making sure her voice didn't betray the storm of emotions brewing inside her. "We've got heart, and we've got each other. That's all we need." Jordan raised an eyebrow, as if assessing her sincerity, before giving a short nod. "We'll see," he said, before walking away. Kelsey watched him go, feeling a spark of something, defiance, perhaps. If anyone thought the Rhythm Rebels were a fluke, she would prove them wrong. She turned back to her crew. "We're doing this," she said, the words solid and final. The time had finally arrived. Their crew's name was called, and Kelsey could feel her pulse quicken as they made their way toward the stage. As they walked through the backstage area and onto the stage floor, the bright lights hit her like a wave, temporarily blinding her. The audience was a blur, but the energy in the air was undeniable. This was it, the moment they had all been waiting for. The opening notes of their music began, and Kelsey felt herself slip into that familiar space, the place where the world faded away and all that mattered was the dance. She caught the eyes of each of her crew members as they lined up, ready to start. There were no more doubts. No more fears. There was only the music. The rhythm. The moves. And then they were off. The routine began with intensity. Kelsey's heart hammered as the first moves flowed into place, sharp, fluid, synchronized. She could feel every beat, every shift in energy as they moved in unison. But she knew that this was more than just the choreography. This was about showing the world who the Rhythm Rebels were. They weren't just a group of dancers, they were a team. And they were there to win. The moves were fast, fierce, and precise. Aaron's once rigid movements now had a smoothness to them, blending seamlessly with everyone else's. Tiffany's controlled power created a balance with Layla's fluid grace. Jasmine brought the spark, her energy lit up the stage, urging everyone else to give their all. And Maya, as always, was a rock, steady, focused, and ever so present in every step. But as the routine reached its climax, Kelsey's nerves threatened to overwhelm her. This was the part where they had to go all out, the final move, the high-flying spin, the leap, and the dramatic finish. Everything depended on this moment. They couldn't afford a single mistake. Kelsey pushed herself harder, faster, her body moving as though it were on autopilot. She caught the beat, felt the rhythm surge through her, and when it was time, she launched herself into the air, soaring high, landing with perfect precision, just as she had practiced. The rest of the crew followed suit, hitting the final move with flawless synchronization. And as the music cut off, they froze in place, the silence in the arena deafening for a split second. Then, the crowd erupted. It was like a wave of energy crashing over them. Cheers. Applause. The sound was overwhelming. Kelsey stood, frozen for a moment, her chest heaving from the effort, her body tingling with the adrenaline of the performance. She looked around at her crew, every one of them had given everything, had pushed through their doubts and their fears. They had done it. And as the applause continued to roll in, Kelsey couldn't help but think that, for the first time in a long time, she wasn't worried about what was next. All that mattered now was that they had done their best. They had come together, and they had shown the world exactly who the Rhythm Rebels were. The crew stood backstage, still catching their breath, and though they were exhausted, there was a sense of peace. They had done it. No matter the outcome, they had achieved something incredible. But then, through the backstage chaos, a familiar figure appeared. Jordan Blackwell. "Not bad," he said, his voice tinged with something akin to respect. "Not bad at all." Kelsey met his gaze, her heart still racing from the performance. "Thanks," she said simply. Jordan gave a slight nod. "You might just have what it takes to go all the way. But don't get too comfortable, there's a lot more to this than just one good routine." Kelsey smiled, her confidence unwavering. "We're ready for whatever comes next." And with that, they turned to face the future. The competition was far from over. But one thing was for sure, the Rhythm Rebels were not going anywhere. The applause still echoed in Kelsey's ears, but it was fading now, becoming a distant hum as she stood backstage, watching her crew gather together. Their performance had been flawless, but she could feel the tension building again. They had done their best, but now came the hard part, the waiting. The judges were deliberating, and there was nothing they could do except wait to hear their fate. Kelsey glanced over at Aaron, Tiffany, Layla, Maya, and Jasmine. Each of them wore a similar expression, exhausted, but hopeful. They had given everything on that stage, leaving it all behind. But there was still that looming uncertainty. The competition wasn't just about talent, it was about impact. And while the Rhythm Rebels had left an impression, they had no idea if it was enough to secure the top spot. Kelsey felt a pit in her stomach. The nerves were creeping back in, gnawing at her, threatening to undo everything they had just accomplished. She tried to push it away, but the tension in her chest remained. "Maya," Kelsey said, her voice low, "do you think we did enough?" Maya was sitting nearby, her legs crossed, her eyes distant. She had always been the calm, collected one in the group, and right now, she seemed almost serene. "I think we did everything we could," she replied softly. "It's out of our hands now." Kelsey nodded but couldn't shake the feeling. What if it wasn't enough? What if someone else had done it better? The minutes felt like hours. The crew was starting to get restless, and Kelsey could tell that everyone was trying to hold it together. Tiffany was biting her lip, Aaron was pacing, and Layla was quietly stretching, her eyes downcast. But even in the silence, Kelsey could feel their collective energy, a mix of pride, anxiety, and anticipation. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the stage manager appeared. "The judges have made their decision," she said, her voice clear and confident. "The top 3 crews have been selected, and they will be announced in a few minutes. Please line up for the final results." The crew exchanged nervous glances before standing up and forming a line, trying to hide their nerves behind forced smiles. Kelsey could feel her heart racing as they waited in line. Her palms were clammy, her breath shallow. She glanced at her crew again, wondering what they were all thinking. Each of them had poured their heart and soul into this, and yet, the uncertainty was unbearable. When the stage manager finally returned, the crew braced themselves. She stepped up to the microphone, and the crowd went silent in anticipation. "The third-place winner is the Vibe Collective," she announced. There was a collective exhale of relief among the crew members as the Vibe Collective stepped forward to accept their award. They had put up a good fight, but it wasn't the Rhythm Rebels' time yet. Kelsey's stomach did a somersault. "And now," the stage manager continued, "the second-place winner is Phantom Groove." Kelsey's heart skipped a beat. The top spot was within reach. They had made it to the final 2. She could feel the tension in the room rise, her pulse quickening as the realization set in. She glanced at her crew. They were all holding their breath, waiting for the final moment. Their eyes met, and Kelsey could see the same hope and doubt reflected in each of their gazes. The stage manager paused dramatically, scanning the room before announcing, "And the winner of the National Dance Showdown is..." Kelsey's breath caught in her throat. She could hear her heartbeat pounding in her ears. The Rhythm Rebels. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. The announcement hung in the air, and Kelsey couldn't quite process it. They had won. It was unreal. The crew erupted into cheers, and Kelsey felt herself being pulled into a group hug by Maya, Jasmine, Layla, Tiffany, and Aaron. Laughter and excitement filled the air, but amidst all the joy, Kelsey's thoughts raced. It was happening. They were the national champions. She took a step back, looking at her crew as they celebrated. Each of them had fought for this moment, and now, they had earned it. The hard work, the sweat, the doubts, all of it had led to this victory. But even more than the win, Kelsey felt something deeper, a sense of pride in her crew. They had made it together. The announcer handed over the trophy, and Kelsey's hands shook as she took it, raising it above her head. The crowd cheered again, and it felt like a dream, something Kelsey might wake up from at any moment. But this wasn't a dream. This was real. They had done it. The celebration was wild. They took photos, they laughed, and they exchanged high fives. It felt like the entire world had come alive around them, and they were at the center of it all. But as the noise of the celebration continued, Kelsey found herself stepping away, looking for a moment of peace. She wandered out to the side of the venue, needing a breath of fresh air. The cool night air was a welcome relief. As she leaned against the wall, she closed her eyes, letting the moment sink in. She could hear the muffled sounds of the crew still celebrating inside, but out here, it was just her, the stars above, and the quiet hum of the city. "You okay?" Kelsey turned around to see Aaron standing behind her, his face beaming with pride. She hadn't noticed him slip away from the group. "I'm fine," she said, offering him a smile. "Just taking it all in." Aaron smiled too, his eyes still shining with excitement. "We did it, Kels. We did it." Kelsey laughed, the sound light and carefree. "Yeah, we did." For a moment, they stood in silence, both of them feeling the weight of the win. Kelsey looked at Aaron, and then at the rest of the crew inside. Her heart swelled with pride. She didn't need to say anything more. The victory was shared, not just between them, but with everyone who had ever believed in them. They had proven to the world, and to themselves, that they were more than just a group of dancers. They were a family. And together, there was nothing they couldn't achieve. As they all gathered for one final picture together, the trophy gleaming in the center of their group, Kelsey realized something. This wasn't just the end of a competition. This was the beginning of something new, a new chapter, one where they would keep growing, keep pushing, and keep dancing like they were born to do. And as the camera clicked, Kelsey knew that the Rhythm Rebels were just getting started. The days following the competition were a whirlwind. The news of the Rhythm Rebels' victory spread quickly, and with it came interviews, photo shoots, and opportunities they had never dreamed of. It was exciting, but also overwhelming. Kelsey felt like she was being pulled in a million different directions. Yet, despite the excitement and the constant praise from the media, something inside her kept nagging at her. There was an unspoken pressure now, more eyes were on them, more expectations weighed on their shoulders. They had just reached the peak, but there was a fear that the next step could be even harder than the climb. The crew was enjoying their newfound fame, but Kelsey knew they had to be careful. The hunger for more could turn into a thirst that was hard to satisfy. They needed to stay grounded, remember why they started in the first place. One afternoon, after a photo shoot, Kelsey and the crew gathered at a nearby cafe, their usual hangout spot. It felt like a welcome break from all the flashing lights and cameras. As they sipped their coffee and ate pastries, the conversation turned to what came next. "So, what now?" Tiffany asked, leaning back in her chair with a curious expression. Kelsey set her coffee down and looked around at her friends. "I think we need to figure that out. We've reached the top, but there's always more to learn, more to create. We can't let the win define us. It's what we do next that matters." Aaron nodded in agreement. "Yeah, we've got a lot of momentum right now. Let's not waste it. But also, we can't rush into things," Maya said, ever the calm voice in their group. "We've earned this moment. Let's not let the pressure of what's next take away from the celebration of where we are now." Kelsey smiled. Maya always had a way of keeping things in perspective. The balance between enjoying their victory and looking ahead was tricky, but they were learning how to walk that fine line. "We've got to stay true to what got us here," Kelsey said, her voice steady. "We've built something amazing, something real. And we've got each other to keep pushing forward." Layla, who had been quiet for a while, suddenly spoke up. "What if we use this moment to expand? I mean, really expand. We could start doing our own shows, collaborating with other artists, maybe even get some sponsorships. If we keep this momentum, who knows how far we could go." The suggestion was met with silence at first. Kelsey considered it carefully. They had just won the biggest competition of their lives, and now, here they were, talking about turning their passion into something bigger. The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. "I like that idea," Kelsey said finally. "But we have to make sure we don't lose sight of what makes us special. This crew, these moments, it's all about us coming together, dancing as one. We need to stay focused on that, no matter what." Jasmine, who had been grinning since they sat down, raised her hand excitedly. "And don't forget about the fun, Kelsey. We're already doing something that we love. So let's keep it that way. Whatever comes next, it has to be something that keeps us enjoying what we do." Her words struck a chord with Kelsey. They were right. No matter how big their success became, the heart of what they were doing couldn't change. It had to stay about the love of dance, the love of each other, and the love of the journey. "You're right," Kelsey said, leaning forward. "Let's keep our focus on what we can create, not just on what we can achieve. We've made it this far because we're a team. And that's what matters most." The conversation turned from what they could do next to how they could continue to evolve as a crew. They brainstormed ideas for their next routine, shared what they had learned from the competition, and talked about ways to stay grounded while moving forward. It wasn't about fame. It wasn't about success. It was about the art, the passion, the joy of doing something together. After the meeting, Kelsey walked home alone, her thoughts racing. The wind was cool against her face, the sky was clear, and the world seemed to be full of endless possibilities. But for the first time in a while, Kelsey didn't feel the pressure. There was no need to rush. She had spent so much of her life fighting for recognition, for success, and for validation. But now, she realized that what mattered most was the experience, the bond they had built, and the satisfaction of knowing they were on the right path. The world had seen them as the rhythm rebels, and they had proven themselves. But they were more than just a name. They were a family. Days turned into weeks, and the crew kept working hard. They rehearsed new routines, traveled to different cities for performances, and continued to grow as individuals and as a team. But with every performance, Kelsey felt more grounded. She was learning how to balance the dream with the reality of their success. One afternoon, while they were rehearsing at a new studio in the city, Kelsey was approached by a familiar face, Jordan Blackwell, the judge who had challenged her earlier in the competition. "I've been watching you," Jordan said, with a hint of approval in his tone. "And I have to say, I'm impressed. You've got something special here. You're not just dancers, you're artists." Kelsey blinked, taken aback by the praise. "Thanks," she said, unsure of how to respond. "Listen," Jordan continued, "I've been talking to a few people in the industry. There's a lot of buzz around you right now, and I think it's time you start thinking bigger. There's a company that's interested in partnering with the Rhythm Rebels. They want you to headline their national tour." Kelsey's mind was spinning. A national tour. This was it, the kind of opportunity they'd all dreamed of. But even as the excitement surged within her, a small voice of doubt whispered in the back of her mind. Was this the right move? "I can't promise anything," Jordan added, sensing her hesitation. "But you need to decide quickly. There's a lot at stake here." Kelsey felt her heart beat faster. A national tour. It was everything they had worked for. But as she looked around at her crew, she realized that this decision wasn't just about her. It was about all of them. The weight of the decision was heavy. But Kelsey knew one thing, they had come this far because they had made decisions together. And this one would be no different. That night, Kelsey called a meeting with the crew. They gathered in their familiar spot, the same cafe where they had first talked about their dreams. "Okay, guys," Kelsey began, her voice steady, "there's an opportunity on the table. A national tour, and we've been offered a chance to headline. But it's a big commitment. We need to decide what we want to do next." The crew looked around at each other, their faces a mixture of excitement and uncertainty. This was the moment. This was the choice that would shape their future. We've come so far, Layla said softly. But do we want to risk everything we've built for this? Will it change us? Kelsey took a deep breath. I don't know what will happen. But I know one thing, we've always made our decisions together. And if we take this step, we take it as a team. The room was silent as everyone processed the news. The weight of the decision was clear. But Kelsey knew in that moment that whatever they chose, they would face it together. And that made all the difference. The decision had been made, and now, the Rhythm Rebels found themselves standing on the precipice of something bigger than they had ever imagined. A national tour. The idea had been thrilling at first, but the weight of it was starting to sink in. Kelsey stood in front of the full-length mirror at the studio, staring at her reflection. She was still in her practice clothes, sweat dripping down her face, but her mind was miles away. The thought of a national tour was overwhelming. The stakes were higher now. There was no turning back. You okay? Erin's voice broke through her thoughts. Kelsey turned around and forced a smile. Yeah, just thinking. Erin gave her a knowing look. He had been there for every big moment, and he knew when something was weighing on her. It's a big deal, isn't it? The tour. Kelsey nodded, running a hand through her messy hair. I mean, it's everything we've worked for, right? But I don't want to rush into something just because it's the next big thing. I want to make sure it's what we all want. Erin stepped closer, his expression serious. We all want this. But we have to be careful, Kels. We can't let the pressure break us. We've worked too hard for this, but we've also built something real together. Don't let that get lost in the hype. Kelsey looked at him, her heart heavy with the weight of his words. I won't. I just don't want to let anyone down. You won't, Erin said, his voice reassuring. You've already led us to places we never thought possible. Now, we have to trust that we can keep moving forward together. No matter what comes next. She smiled faintly at his words. It was exactly what she needed to hear. They'd gotten this far because they trusted each other. She couldn't let fear hold her back now. The next few weeks passed in a blur of meetings, rehearsals, and endless phone calls. They had signed the contract for the national tour, and now, everything was set in motion. The Rhythm Rebels would be performing in cities across the country. The excitement was palpable. The team worked tirelessly, creating new routines, tweaking old ones, and practicing every single day until they were flawless. But even as the rehearsals grew more intense, Kelsey could feel something shifting within her. She wasn't the only one who seemed to be feeling it. There was an underlying tension that was hard to ignore. The once seamless teamwork was now tinged with quiet doubts. Layla seemed more withdrawn than usual, Tiffany was often distracted, and even Maya, the ever-optimistic voice of reason, seemed to be carrying a burden Kelsey couldn't quite place. One evening, after a particularly grueling rehearsal, Kelsey decided to take a walk to clear her head. She wandered through the streets of the city, the cool evening air against her skin, trying to process the whirlwind of the past few weeks. Her thoughts were interrupted when she heard a familiar voice calling her name. Kelsey. She turned to see Tiffany running toward her, her face flushed from the cool air. Tiff, Kelsey greeted, raising an eyebrow. What's up? Tiffany stopped in front of her, her expression serious. Can we talk? Kelsey nodded, concern rising in her chest. Of course. What's going on? Tiffany glanced around nervously before taking a deep breath. It's about the tour. I think we need to slow down. I don't know if I'm ready for this. I love dancing, you know I do, but I'm starting to feel like we're pushing ourselves too hard. And I'm worried it might break us. Kelsey was taken aback. Tiffany had always been the go-getter, the one who was all in. To hear her say something like this was a shock. I get it, Kelsey said gently, placing a hand on Tiffany's shoulder. It's a lot. We've all been feeling the pressure. But we're in this together, remember? We don't have to do anything that doesn't feel right. Tiffany bit her lip, clearly conflicted. I just don't want to lose myself in all of this. I don't want to wake up one day and realize that we've sacrificed everything for a dream that doesn't even feel like ours anymore. Kelsey nodded slowly. Tiffany's words struck a chord. The rhythm rebels had worked so hard to get to this point, but in their pursuit of the next big thing, had they lost sight of what made them special? You're not alone in feeling this way, Kelsey said softly. I've been feeling it too. We've come so far, but we have to remember why we started. We can't lose ourselves in the process. Tiffany smiled, relieved by Kelsey's understanding. I'm glad you get it. The two of them stood there for a moment, the city around them buzzing with life, but for Kelsey, everything felt quieter now. She could feel the weight of the decision before them, the pressure to succeed, the pressure to push forward. But in that moment, Kelsey realized that it wasn't about pushing harder. It was about knowing when to stop, when to pause, and when to breathe. We need to talk to the rest of the crew, Kelsey said after a moment. We need to figure out what's best for all of us, not just what's next. Tiffany nodded, a grateful expression on her face. Thank you, Kels. The next day, Kelsey called an emergency meeting with the crew. They gathered at their usual spot, but the energy in the room felt different. Everyone had been on edge recently, and Kelsey knew that it was time to face the truth. I called this meeting because I think we need to be honest with each other, Kelsey began, her voice steady but filled with concern. The tour is happening, but I think we've all been feeling the pressure. And I don't want us to lose sight of why we started doing this in the first place. We've always been a team, and I think it's time we talk about what we really want. There was a long silence as the crew exchanged uneasy glances. Finally, Maya spoke up, her voice calm and measured. We've worked so hard for this, but Kelsey's right. We've gotten so caught up in what's next that we've forgotten why we're doing this. I think we all need to take a step back and think about what really matters to us. Is it about the tour, or is it about the journey? Layla nodded slowly, her voice quieter than usual. I think we need to find a balance. We can still chase our dreams, but we need to make sure we're doing it for the right reasons. Jasmine, who had been quieter than usual, finally spoke up. I don't want to feel like I'm just a part of a machine. I want to dance because I love it, not because I'm chasing something that's out of my control. The room was heavy with the weight of their words, but it felt like a release. Finally, the tension was being acknowledged, and they were no longer pretending that everything was perfect. I agree, Kelsey said, her voice filled with resolve. We've come this far together. But we have to make sure we're moving forward for the right reasons. This tour isn't the end of the road, it's just another chapter. And we'll write it together, however that looks. The crew nodded, and for the first time in weeks, Kelsey felt a sense of relief wash over her. They had made it through the hardest part, being honest with themselves. The road ahead would be challenging, but Kelsey knew that they would face it as a team, united by their love for dance and the bond they had created. And no matter where this journey took them, they would never forget where they came from. The decision had been made. The crew had come to a consensus. The national tour would still happen, but on their own terms. They weren't going to let the pressure of it all consume them. It was time to focus on what mattered most, their passion for dancing, the love they shared for each other, and the journey that had brought them this far. They didn't rush. They took the time to revise their routines, create new pieces that felt like true expressions of who they were, and most importantly, they took time to reconnect with the essence of what had gotten them here, joy. Dance was supposed to feel freeing, not like a race to the next goal. As the days passed, their bond deepened. They spent long hours together rehearsing, but now it felt like a release. There was no longer the pressure of winning or performing. It was simply about sharing their passion with the world, doing it for the right reasons. And then, the tour began. The opening night was in New York City, the heartbeat of the country's entertainment industry. The lights of Times Square sparkled like stars above them as they arrived at the venue, an enormous arena that would host thousands of eager fans. The energy in the air was electric, but there was a part of Kelsey that couldn't shake the nerves. She stood backstage, peering through the curtains at the crowd slowly filling in. She could hear the low murmur of voices, the sound of footsteps echoing as people took their seats. Her heart was racing in her chest, her palms clammy. This was it, the moment they had all worked toward. This was the chance to prove they weren't just another group of dancers, but artists with something meaningful to share. Kelsey. A soft voice broke her from her thoughts. It was Tiffany. Kelsey turned to face her. Tiffany smiled, but Kelsey could see the same nervous energy in her eyes. "You okay?" Kelsey took a deep breath, shaking off the anxiety. "I will be. It's just, a lot, you know." Tiffany nodded. "I get it. But we've got this. We've been through so much to get here. We're ready." Kelsey smiled back, the warmth of Tiffany's words settling her nerves. They were ready. No matter what happened, they had come together for this moment. They would give it their all. And they would do it as a team. As the opening chords of their first song played over the loudspeakers, Kelsey's heart leapt into her throat. It was time. The lights dimmed. The crowd fell silent in anticipation. Then, with a sudden burst of energy, the music erupted, and the crew burst onto the stage. The moment they stepped out under the spotlight, a wave of adrenaline rushed through Kelsey's body. She could feel the energy of the crowd, their excitement, their anticipation, and it fueled her movements. Every step, every turn, every beat was sharper, more confident, and full of emotion. For the next hour, the world melted away as the Rhythm Rebels danced like they had never danced before. They performed with an intensity, an authenticity that the audience could feel. Each member of the crew shone in their own unique way, but it was clear that they were in perfect sync with each other. It was as if the music was pulling them together, binding them with an invisible thread. Kelsey had never felt more alive. As she leapt across the stage, her body fluid and powerful, she knew without a doubt that this was what she was meant to do. And looking out at the crowd, the sheer joy on their faces, Kelsey realized that this was more than just a performance. It was a shared experience, a connection that transcended the music, the moves, and even the lights. The crowd roared as they finished their final routine, a breathtakingly complex sequence that left everyone on the edge of their seats. Kelsey felt a rush of pride, but she couldn't help but feel a pang of disbelief. They had done it. They had come from the streets, from the shadows, and now they were here, on a stage, in front of thousands of people, doing what they loved most. As the music faded and the applause thundered through the arena, Kelsey's eyes met those of her crew. They were all grinning, eyes wide with astonishment, as if they couldn't believe what had just happened. For a moment, it felt like time had stopped, like everything had fallen into place. Then, Kelsey heard the voice of the announcer booming over the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for the Rhythm Rebels." The crew gathered in the center of the stage, hands raised in victory, as the crowd erupted into applause and cheers. Kelsey felt a lump rise in her throat. This was real. They had made it. Later, as they stood backstage, catching their breath and grinning like they had just won the lottery, Kelsey couldn't help but reflect on everything that had led them to this moment. The struggles, the doubts, the endless rehearsals, it had all been worth it. The tour was just beginning, but Kelsey knew that no matter what came next, the Rhythm Rebels would always be a team. But even as the excitement of the night washed over them, Kelsey noticed the subtle shift in the atmosphere. There was a quiet tension in the air that she couldn't ignore. Layla was standing off to the side, a little apart from the group, her face thoughtful. Maya was sitting on a nearby bench, massaging her legs, but her eyes were distant. Tiffany and Aaron were talking excitedly, but there was an underlying hesitation in their voices. It wasn't that anything felt wrong, it was just different. And Kelsey realized, with a start, that the journey ahead wasn't going to be easy. The tour was only the beginning. There would be challenges, obstacles, and pressures they hadn't even begun to face yet. The lights, the stage, the applause, it was all incredible. But the real test, Kelsey knew, was in how they would handle the next chapter. Could they stay true to themselves in the face of growing fame? Could they keep their bond intact when the world started pulling them in all directions? She didn't have the answers yet, but one thing was certain: whatever came next, they would face it together. The first few weeks of the tour were everything they had dreamed of. The Rhythm Rebels performed in sold-out arenas, danced under the brightest lights, and felt the exhilarating rush of a crowd that adored them. Kelsey had never experienced anything like it before. The sound of their name being shouted by thousands of fans, the applause after each routine, it felt like they were living in a dream. But with every high came a low. It was early morning in Chicago, the crew's first day off after a string of performances. They were staying in a luxury hotel, but despite the plush surroundings, the weight of the tour was starting to show. Kelsey woke up with a headache, the familiar pressure in her chest that she had learned to ignore creeping up again. The constant travel, the performances, the interviews, all of it was starting to catch up to her. She sat up in bed, running a hand through her tangled hair as she checked her phone. There were dozens of messages from the crew's manager, reminders about the upcoming events, tour dates, and photo shoots. But something about the messages felt overwhelming. Another early start, Kelsey muttered to herself, sighing as she tossed the phone onto the bed. She slipped out of bed, trying to shake off the exhaustion, and grabbed a jacket to head out for a quick walk. The cool air outside felt refreshing against her skin, but as she walked the quiet streets of Chicago, her thoughts kept drifting back to the strain that was beginning to show among the group. The more successful they became, the more the pressure piled on. She had seen it in the others. Aaron had been quieter, Tiffany had become distant, and Layla had started snapping at the smallest things. Even Maya, who had always been the rock of their group, had begun to retreat into herself. It wasn't just the physical exhaustion of touring, it was the mental toll. The constant pressure to stay on top, to keep pushing forward, to give the fans more, every day, every moment, felt like it demanded something of them. Kelsey sat on a bench in the park, taking a deep breath as she tried to gather her thoughts. She loved this. She loved dancing, she loved performing, and most of all, she loved doing it with the Rhythm Rebels. But she could feel it, the weight of expectation, of success, and the fear that it might all slip away if they didn't keep up the momentum. Back at the hotel, the crew gathered in the lobby for their daily briefing. The moment Kelsey entered, she noticed the tension. Tiffany was sitting with her arms crossed, a distant look in her eyes. Aaron was pacing back and forth, clearly agitated. Layla was sitting with her headphones in, her face hidden behind a hoodie. Maya was the first to greet Kelsey, though her smile was strained. "Hey, Kels. You good?" Kelsey gave her a small nod. "Yeah, just needed some fresh air." But even Maya seemed off. She wasn't her usual upbeat self. "What's going on?" Kelsey asked, frowning as she surveyed the group. Aaron stopped pacing and ran a hand through his hair. "I can't take this anymore. The constant running, the interviews, the photo shoots, and don't get me started on the pressure to keep up the hype. It's exhausting." His voice cracked slightly, betraying the exhaustion he felt. Kelsey's heart sank. "I get it," she said, stepping toward him. "We're all feeling it. But we're in this together. We've come so far." Layla took off her headphones and stood up. "We're all tired, Kelsey. And it's not just the physical stuff. It's the mental load. I didn't sign up for this to feel like I'm constantly pretending to be happy. I feel like I'm losing myself." Tiffany spoke up, her voice quieter than usual. "I think we need to talk about what we really want out of this. I've been thinking about it a lot, and I'm not sure I'm doing this for the right reasons anymore. I don't want to be part of a machine that just cranks out performances." Kelsey's mind raced. This was what she had feared. The pressure was breaking them. The dream they had once shared, dancing for the pure joy of it, was starting to feel like a heavy burden. The spotlight, the fame, the constant demand for more, they had all been part of the dream, but now, the dream was turning into something else. Something that didn't feel as fulfilling. She took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside her. "We're all in this together," Kelsey said, her voice firm but gentle. "But I think we need to step back and figure out what we want. We've gotten so caught up in the machine, in being the rhythm rebels, that we've forgotten what it means to just dance for the love of it. We need to remember why we started in the first place." There was a long silence, as if everyone was processing what Kelsey had said. Then, Maya spoke, her voice soft but filled with understanding. "Maybe we do need to take a step back. Find the joy in what we do again, without worrying about the pressure." Tiffany nodded. "I don't want to be famous for the sake of being famous. I want to create something meaningful, something that matters." Aaron stepped forward, his expression serious. "We need to set boundaries. We don't have to do everything they throw at us. We don't have to please everyone. We have to protect what we've built." Kelsey's heart swelled with pride. The crew was speaking the truth. They were admitting the strain, acknowledging their feelings, and most importantly, they were choosing to fight for what truly mattered, their passion, their creativity, and their unity. "You're right," Kelsey said, her voice filled with conviction. "We can still take this tour to new heights, but we do it on our terms. We make the decisions. We protect our happiness. We protect us." The others nodded in agreement, their faces lighting up with the strength of their shared resolve. They had faced the truth, and now they were ready to face whatever came next, together. Later that evening, as the crew sat in the hotel's common room, laughing and talking about their favorite memories from the tour so far, Kelsey felt a sense of calm settle over her. There would be obstacles ahead. There would be more challenges. But the most important thing was that they had each other. And as long as they stayed true to themselves, they could weather any storm. The tour wasn't just about the destination, it was about the journey, the people they became along the way, and the love they had for each other. And that, Kelsey realized, was the real success. The tour had reached its final leg, and as the crew prepared for their last performance, Kelsey couldn't help but reflect on how far they had come. The journey had been long, challenging, and often filled with moments of uncertainty. But now, standing backstage of the Grand Arena in Los Angeles, she felt a sense of peace. They had made it. And they had done it together. The city outside was alive with energy, but the atmosphere backstage was tense with anticipation. This was it, the closing show of their nationwide tour, the one everyone had been waiting for. Kelsey stood in front of the mirror, fixing her makeup, but she wasn't thinking about how she looked. Her mind was filled with the memories of the months they had spent on the road, the laughter, the late-night rehearsals, the moments of doubt and the moments of triumph. They had come to know each other in ways that no one else could understand. The crew wasn't just a team anymore, they were family. They had fought for this, for the dream they had shared. But more importantly, they had learned to fight for each other. They had learned to support one another, even when things got tough. Kelsey adjusted her jacket, taking one last look at herself in the mirror before stepping into the backstage area. Her heart was pounding, but there was no fear. There was only excitement. This was what they had worked for. Tiffany was already waiting by the side of the stage, her head bobbing to the beat of the intro music playing faintly from the speakers. Aaron was cracking jokes with Maya, trying to keep the mood light. Layla stood silently in the corner, her eyes focused, a quiet strength radiating from her. They were ready. "All right, team," Kelsey said, walking over to them. "This is it. We've got one more show to give. Let's make it count." Everyone nodded in agreement. No one needed to say more. The bond they had formed was stronger than words. They lined up backstage, ready to take their positions as the announcer's voice echoed through the venue. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the incredible Rhythm Rebels. The crowd erupted into cheers, the sound almost deafening. Kelsey's heart swelled with pride, but she didn't allow herself to be distracted by the applause. There was a job to do, and she was ready. As the curtain lifted, the lights hit them like a wave. The music began, and just like that, they were swept into the performance. Kelsey's body moved instinctively to the rhythm, every step, every spin, every leap flowing with the music. The moves felt effortless, the energy of the crowd feeding into her as she danced. The entire crew was in perfect sync, every move in harmony with the others. The performance wasn't just about the choreography, it was about the connection they had built, about the shared experience of dancing for the love of it. They weren't just performing, they were communicating with the audience, telling a story through every movement, every expression. And then came the moment that Kelsey had been waiting for, the final sequence. It was a routine they had spent weeks perfecting, one that combined everything they had learned along the way. The moves were daring, the transitions smooth, and the energy electric. Kelsey felt herself slipping into that familiar zone, where everything else disappeared. There was no crowd, no stage, no tour, just her crew, and the music. She danced like she had never danced before, pushing her body to the limit, pouring every ounce of energy into each step. And when the final beat hit, the crowd exploded. The arena shook with applause, cheers, and whistles. Kelsey stood in the center of the stage, breathless, her heart racing. The crew gathered around her, arms raised in victory, faces glowing with the same sense of fulfillment. They had done it. They had given everything, and in return, they had received more than they could have ever hoped for. As the cheers continued to echo around them, Kelsey looked out into the crowd. She saw faces filled with joy, eyes wide with excitement. She knew that this moment was more than just a performance, it was the culmination of everything they had worked for, every sacrifice, every hard day. They had done something important, something that meant something to them and to everyone who had supported them along the way. The final encore was a blur, more cheers, more music, more celebration. But even as the last song faded and the lights began to dim, Kelsey couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The journey they had started together was far from over. There were new challenges ahead, new goals to reach, new dreams to chase. After the performance, the crew gathered backstage, their faces flushed with excitement and exhaustion. There were hugs, high fives, and laughter, but it was clear that this moment was bittersweet. They had reached the end of the tour, but Kelsey could feel that their journey was only just beginning. Tiffany was the first to speak. "We did it. We really did it." Aaron clapped her on the back. "Yeah, and we did it our way. I'm proud of all of us." Layla, usually reserved, let out a small laugh. "Who would have thought? We came from nothing, and now look at us." Maya smiled, her eyes sparkling. "We may have started as a group of dancers, but now, we're something more. We're a family." Kelsey felt a lump in her throat. The words resonated deep within her. They were a family, more than a crew, more than a group of dancers. They had become a support system for one another, a group of people who understood each other in ways no one else could. And that bond, that connection, was unbreakable. As the night wore on, the crew gathered their belongings and prepared to head home. The tour was over, but it felt like there was still so much more to do. They were going back to their individual lives, but they knew they had something special to hold on to. The love for dance, the shared experiences, and the unwavering bond between them would stay with them, no matter where life took them next. Kelsey looked at her friends, her family, and smiled. This isn't the end. It's just the start of something bigger. And as the lights of Los Angeles twinkled outside, Kelsey knew that the Rhythm Rebels would always be a part of her. No matter where their paths took them, they would always have the music, the dance, and the memories they had created together. This was only the beginning. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?